Holiday music fills the air as crowds of people wander through the snowy city streets. Everyone seems to be in the festive spirit, except for one man walking against the flow. The sound of laughter and the twinkling lights on the Christmas trees only make the winter cold feel even more biting for those who are alone. A happy young family walks together with the little girl asking her parents if they had fun today. They are the picture of holiday perfection. As they stroll by, they nearly collide with a massive man in a dark trench coat. Juwon stands out like a sore thumb in this cheerful crowd. The little girl stops in her tracks, staring up in awe because our boy is absolutely massive compared to everyone else on the sidewalk. Juwon does not even give them a second look as he continues his solitary trek through the falling snow. He is just trying to get through the night. He thinks to himself that out of every single person on this busy street, he is the only one who is truly alone. It is a harsh realization. Trudging toward the subway entrance, he keeps his head down to avoid seeing any more happy couples or joyful families. Suddenly, he stops. Something on the ground catches his attention and makes him pause mid-stride. He stops to look at someone huddled against the freezing cold, right near the entrance to the subway. He spots a sign on the ground asking people to share their deepest Christmas wishes with this strange Santa. Juwon kneels down next to a ragged man dressed in a faded Santa suit, who is begging for change in the freezing weather. Our boy pulls out his wallet and sees it is packed with 10,000 won bills. He is definitely not hurting for cash. Instead of just walking away, he grabs some money and a triangle kimbap he had saved for later. He gently sets the cash and the snack down on the sign, hoping it will make the old man's night a little easier. Just as he is about to leave, a hand shoots out and grabs Juwon's wrist with a grip like a literal vice. The beggar Santa starts shouting and crying, thanking him for being such a kind soul. Juwon is completely caught off guard by the sudden physical contact and the man's surprising strength. Our boy looks down at the guy with a mixture of annoyance and genuine confusion. He was just trying to do a good deed. The old man doubles down, grabbing Juwon's hand with both of his as he starts rambling about rewards and wishes. Santa claims he has come specifically to grant a wish to a kind soul. Juwon is shocked because he has never been physically overpowered by anyone before. The beggar begs Juwon to tell him his wish, claiming he cannot return to Santa Village until he fulfills his duty. Juwon can only let out a heavy sigh. Seeing that this guy is not going to let go until he hears something, Juwon looks down at the desperate man and decides to just play along. Juwon stares into the old man's eyes and realizes that this might be more than just a regular crazy person on the street. Santa tells him that his first thought was not sincere. He wants Juwon to dig deep and share a truly heartfelt wish. For a moment, the tough exterior of our protagonist fades as he thinks about what he really wants more than anything else. His mind drifts back to a dark and lonely funeral where he sat by himself. He truly wants a family that won't leave him behind and will stay by his side. With a tired and slightly sad smile, Juwon finally admits his deepest desire to the strange man in the red suit. The beggar squeezes his hand firmly, acknowledging the weight of such sincere and lonely wish. Santa closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, looking like he is concentrating all of his energy into making this happen. Suddenly, the old man breaks out into a wide grin. He promises to use every bit of his power to make Juwon's dream a reality. Things take a terrifying turn as the old man manifests a strange power, vowing to find our boy a wife with a heart as pure as the fresh snow. He goes on to claim that this daughter will be beautiful, a perfect child to complete his future home. Santa continues his proclamation, vowing that his daughter will also be someone who respects and follows her father in everything he does. Juwon starts to freak out, pulling his hand away as the old man starts looking more like a monster than a jolly saint. This is getting way too intense for a simple subway encounter. Our boy decides he has had enough of this crazy person and bolts down the street as fast as he can. He thinks the guy has completely lost his mind, unaware that his life is about to change forever. Santa yells out that every single one of them back at the village is rooting for our boy. It sounds like a cosmic blessing or a curse. Juwon sprints down the stairs as fast as his legs can carry him. That creepy old man is still standing there waving and shouting like a total lunatic. Our protagonist is sweating buckets, thinking he just barely escaped a complete madman. The world starts to blur as the sound of the city fades into the background. A subway train screams past the platform in a blur of green and white light. While catching his breath on the train, he realizes that crazy old man left a dark bruise on his wrist. He wonders what that weirdo was even talking about back there. He is slumped over in his seat, surrounded by normal people just living their lives. It all feels so surreal after that intense encounter in the subway station. He admits to himself that the only reason he even shared his wish was because of how lonely he felt. An advertisement for a happy family stares back at him from the subway wall. It is the life he has always wanted. That is the ultimate goal for our lonely protagonist after all. Ju-won closes his eyes for just a second to block out the world around him. Darkness suddenly washes over everything as his consciousness starts to slip away into a deep purple void. A strange, vibrating sound echoes through his mind, as if reality itself is being ripped apart. He groans in pain as he starts to wake up feeling like his head was hit by a truck. His eyes snap open in a panic as he realizes something is very wrong. He stares in shock at the medieval village passing by as a gruff driver hauls his cage toward an unknown fate. It seems our boy has been dropped right into a historical fantasy movie, and he is the one in chains. Ju-won realizes he is half naked and chained up like an animal inside this wooden cage. He is shivering and confused as he tries to make sense of his new surroundings. He looks over and sees a middle-aged man with long hair staring blankly ahead. Another prisoner looks completely broken with drool running down his chin and a vacant expression. Ju-won scans the crowded prison transport and sees several other men chained up by their ankles with heavy iron balls. Everyone inside this cage looks completely defeated as they are hauled off to an unknown destination. Ju-won shivers as he finally starts to realize just how dire his current situation has actually become. Ju-won hears voices outside and quickly turns his head to see who is talking. Several soldiers in blue armor are walking alongside the carriage carrying long spears. Our boy listens closely, but he can't understand a single word they are saying. It is a completely alien language that he has never heard in his entire life. As the carriage continues its journey, our protagonist notices that the driver and surroundings look like something out of a medieval film. He realizes with a shock that he hasn't heard a single familiar word, and there isn't a single person from his home country in sight. Our protagonist stares out from behind the bars with a look of pure disbelief on his face. He lets out a heavy breath while trying his best to calm down his racing heart. The iron weights on his ankles clank together every time the carriage hits a bump in the road. He looks at a man slumped over in the corner and wonders if the poor guy is even alive. Ju-won reaches out to check on the unconscious prisoner as he struggles to maintain his composure. He finds some tattered green clothes and pulls them on to cover himself up. Now fully dressed in the rags provided, our boy collapses back onto the floor of the cage. He is exhausted and terrified of what comes next in this strange new world. The carriage continues to rattle along the path while he stares up at the wooden ceiling. Santa's words about pouring all his power into making the wish come true echo through his mind. He wonders if this nightmare is the happiness that crazy old man was talking about. It seems he completely misunderstood what that Santa meant when he promised to change his life. Our boy is lying there feeling like he just got the worst deal in history. The horse-drawn carriage keeps moving through a dense forest as the sun begins to set. Ju-won sits with his back against the bars, realizing that everyone in this carriage is a slave. Leaning against the wooden frame of the cart, Ju-won tries to catch his breath while processing the insane reality of being a slave. He looks around at the grim faces of his fellow captives and realizes his life has been turned upside down in an instant. Looking around at the other prisoners, he realizes he has to find a way to survive this madness. The sharp click of a metal lock echoes through the air as the guards prepare to unload their new cargo of slaves. Guards in heavy steel armor bark orders in a strange tongue as they begin dragging prisoners out of the transport carriage. From the back of the cage, Ju-won watches his fellow slaves being led away like livestock, realizing his turn is coming soon. Even though he's surrounded by despair, a small flicker of hope starts to ignite deep within his mind. Our boy takes a good look at his own body and realizes his muscular build is actually a massive advantage here. While the other men are huddled on the floor looking broken, Ju-won sits up and wonders if his strength is the only thing that will keep him alive in this hellhole. Our boy stares out through the bars of his cage, his face sweating as he tries to keep his composure despite the mounting fear. Even though he's trapped, he forces a small, determined smirk as he begins to formulate a plan to survive this nightmare. The brief moment of confidence quickly fades, replaced by a look of utter exhaustion and grim acceptance of his fate. The carriage continues its slow journey through a dense forest, the sound of the wheels on dirt being the only music they hear. Armed guards follow closely behind on a separate cart, making sure none of the prisoners get any bright ideas about escaping. Ju-won finally hits his limit and collapses onto the hard wooden floor as the carriage hits a bump. The constant rattling and the stifling heat are starting to break his spirit, making every mile feel like a slow crawl toward his own grave. Drowning in total despair, he begins to wonder if there is even any point in trying to survive such a miserable existence. Suddenly, a memory of a voice breaks through the darkness of his thoughts, telling him to work hard and live life to the fullest. He sees a vision of his mother, her warm presence on his shoulder, fading comfort from a life he can barely remember. He remembers when he was just an innocent kid, a painful reminder of the simple life he once took for granted. Back in the present, he whispers for his parents while lying in the dirt, feeling the crushing weight of loneliness as he faces a future with no family, no freedom, and absolutely no hope. He asks himself if he will truly be able to endure the suffering that lies ahead in this new world. The words of the crazy old man who called himself Santa ring in his ears, promising to use all his power for one wish. He remembers the strange encounter in the snow when that old man begged him to make a wish as a reward for his kindness. His hand trembles as he reaches for a discarded metal fork on the floor of the cage. He decides that both this new world and his old one can go straight to hell, and he is done being a victim of fate. In a blur of motion, he swings his arm back, gathering every ounce of strength for his final act. He tightens his grip on the fork, his knuckles white as he prepares to plunge the metal into his own flesh. With a guttural scream, Ju-won drives the makeshift weapon toward his neck, desperate to escape the misery of his life. In his mind, dying is the only way to finally find peace and escape the constant pain of his existence. The sharp points of the fork press against his skin, drawing a tiny drop of blood as he hesitates at the very last second. A blurry vision of a happy family flashes before him, their warmth acting like a sudden break on his suicidal impulse. Tears stream down his face as he looks up, his hand shaking violently as the fork remains poised at his throat. Just as he is about to give up, a fresh loaf of bread is suddenly pushed through the iron bars by a mysterious hand. A beautiful woman stands outside the cage, her radiant smile practically lighting up the dark forest. She looks at Ju-won with a kindness he hasn't seen in forever, stopping him just before he can do the unthinkable. Our boy stares at her in absolute shock, clutching the loaf as she speaks in a language he can't understand. Even though the words are a mystery, her gentle tone tells him everything he needs to know about her kindness. A small blonde girl peeks out from behind the woman's dress, looking at the man in the cage with curious and innocent eyes. The fork clatters to the wooden floor as Ju-won realizes that this is the wish he asked for. Looking at the woman and the child, he feels a spark of hope that he thought was dead forever, and he finally understands what that Santa meant. Deep in the woods, a quiet cabin stands surrounded by a sturdy wooden fence. It looks like a peaceful place to live, tucked away far from the noise of the rest of the world. Inside, a woman sits at a small table with a young girl. They are sharing a simple meal in the dim light of their modest home. The little girl is clearly enjoying her food, eagerly tipping the bowl to get every last drop. Kids really do have the best appetites for even the simplest meals. The woman slides a bowl of warm soup across the table. Even when they have so little, she prioritizes the child's hunger over her own. The little girl stops eating and looks at the woman with a serious, observant expression. She seems to be sensing that something is wrong or that her guardian is holding back. The woman tells the girl that she is full, so the little one can have more. She just wants to make sure the child gets enough to eat. But this kid is too smart to be fooled. She points at the woman and insists that if she is hungry, then the woman must be just as hungry too. Without hesitation, the girl slides the bowl back toward the woman. It is a small gesture, but it shows the deep bond they have already formed. The woman gives a gentle, weary smile as she watches the child eat. It is a rare moment of peace in their otherwise difficult lives. Suddenly, the peace is shattered by a violent pounding on the front door. The heavy thuds echo through the small room, startling them both. The woman immediately pulls the girl into a protective hug. A voice from outside tells them they don't need to open up and to just listen to the council decision. The messenger announces that the village council has decided one of the men brought in by the soldiers will become her new husband. The woman's face falls in absolute horror. She is told to bring food to welcome the soldiers at dawn and meet at the village entrance. The man outside leaves as quickly as he arrived, leaving them in silence. Her mind starts racing as she tries to process the news. She never expected the village elders to decide her fate this quickly. Fear takes hold as she clutches the girl tighter in the dark. The thought of being forced into another marriage makes her skin crawl with memories of past pain. She admits to herself that she is terrified of being beaten again. Everything in her wants to run away, but she feels completely paralyzed where she stands. She knows that running away is simply not an option for her right now. Leaving the safety of the cabin feels impossible when she considers the dangers outside. Even though they haven't been together for long, she cannot bring herself to leave this innocent child behind. The bond they share is the only thing keeping her grounded. Despair finally takes hold as she begins to weep for their uncertain future. She refuses to let this little one suffer the same abandonment she once endured. The little girl's eyes well up with large, heavy tears as she looks up. The weight of the woman's distress has clearly transferred to the sensitive child. The girl begins to cry openly, her face contorting with sadness. She doesn't fully understand the situation, but she can feel the absolute despair in the air. A loud, heart-wrenching wail echoes through the room. The child's grief is a pure and vocal expression of the fear they are both feeling in the dark cabin. Standing alone in the center of the room, she feels the crushing weight of the council's decision. Every shadow in the cabin reminds her of the life she is trying to escape. Late at night, the woman curls up against the wall in despair. The weight of her situation is finally starting to crush her spirit. Looking over at the sleeping girl, her expression is filled with a mixture of love and deep regret. She wonders how much longer she can protect this child from the harsh reality. The woman looks down at the little girl, who has finally cried herself to sleep while clutching her worn-out teddy bear. It is a fragile moment of rest in a terrible night. This poor 5-year-old child doesn't even have a proper name to call her own yet. She is only known to the village as the daughter of the man who died. Bitterness washes over her as she remembers how her own father sold her off for a single rabbit pelt. Her value was nothing more than a scrap of fur. She gazes out at the cold, moonlit woods through the gaps in the cabin walls. Her mind drifts back to the dark history of how she first arrived at this cursed place. Before she could even finish unpacking her meager belongings, the man who was to be her husband began his abuse. The sound of his violence still echoes in her mind years later. She can still see the terrifying shadow of that monster looming over her during their first encounter. There was no escape from the cruelty that was about to define her daily life. Realizing that her wretched life was only just beginning made the physical pain feel even worse. The miserable reality of her situation crushed any hope she had left for happiness. She remembers lying broken and defeated on the hard wooden floor after a particularly brutal beating. The coldness of the wood was the only thing she could feel in those dark moments. Through the haze of her pain, she saw a tiny figure cautiously approaching her in the dim light. This was the first time the child had ever seen her in such a pathetic state. Exhaustion and trauma were etched into her features as she struggled to keep her eyes open. She had become a shell of her former self, surviving only on pure instinct. Looking up, she saw the girl watching her with eyes full of innocent concern and confusion. It was the first time anyone in this godforsaken place had looked at her with actual kindness. The little girl slowly approaches and sits down on the floor beside her. Despite the darkness and the violence, the child refuses to let her be alone in her pain. The little girl reaches out with a tiny hand, trying to comfort the woman. Even at her young age, she can sense the deep sadness radiating from her guardian. Out of everyone she had ever known, this little angel was the only one brave enough to approach her. This small gesture of empathy changed everything for the broken woman. They ended up huddled together on the floor, seeking warmth in their shared misery. In that moment, they were two abandoned souls finally finding a reason to survive. News that he was devoured by wolves brought a sudden wave of relief she never expected to feel. The sky seemed a bit clearer for a moment, as if the weight of her oppression had finally lifted. But that momentary peace was quickly swallowed by the uncertainty of what would come next for them. Dark memories still plague her mind, even though the man who caused her so much pain is finally dead and gone. Looking toward her child brings no comfort when she realizes they are still at the mercy of the village and its leaders. Safety still feels far away as they stay locked inside their tiny room, wondering if the village will ever let them truly be free. Taking the child outside the next day reveals a heavy atmosphere, as if everyone is waiting for something life-changing to happen. Little girl stops in her tracks and points toward the road, her wide eyes filled with confusion and intense curiosity. A wooden wagon slowly rolls into the center of town, carrying a massive iron cage on its back with a prisoner trapped inside. The woman watched as the wagon came to a halt, wondering who this prisoner could possibly be and why he was here. Both of them watch from a distance as the crowd gathers, unable to look away from the mysterious man sitting behind bars. Juwon sits there in total silence, looking completely roughed up as he keeps his head down to ignore the stares of the judgmental villagers. Seeing him triggers something deep within her, sparking a sudden flash of a traumatic memory she had tried so hard to bury. Voices of the past start screaming in her mind, calling her a useless wretch who can't do anything to help herself. Traumatic memories of her husband's violence start flooding back, reminding her of the countless times he used her as a punching bag. Something about the man in the cage triggers a deep, visceral reaction in her, causing a sudden flash of a figure from her past. Every time she trembled in fear, he would simply mock her, claiming she was just putting on a pathetic and dramatic show. That fragile piece she tried to build is instantly shattered by the mental echo of breaking glass and his booming, angry voice. He told her that her very presence was enough to ruin his appetite, treating her like she was nothing more than trash. The cruel man towers over her, his silhouette cold and imposing. He spits out insults, claiming her mere presence is enough to ruin his appetite. She could still see the reflection of his cruelty in her nightmares, a constant ghost haunting her every waking moment. The memory is so sharp, she can still see the terrifying reflection of the man's weapon in her own eyes. She vividly remembers the cold, murderous look he gave her right before the violence began. Knowing she can't just stand by, the woman reaches into her basket to pull out a single, humble piece of bread for him. She stepped toward the wagon, the bread held out as a small offering of mercy to the man inside. Holding the small offering tightly, she prepares to cross the line of village rules to show a simple act of human kindness. Juwon finally lifts his gaze, looking surprised to see a woman and a young child standing right in front of his iron bars. Interrupting her moment, an old man from the village rushes over to see if the new arrivals have finally reached the square. He assumes she is just following orders to feed the prisoner and reaches out to take the heavy basket from her hands. After the interaction, she starts to walk away while the man stays behind, still clutching the bread that was given to him. The little girl can't help but stare back at the prisoner, her eyes filled with a mix of wonder and pity for the stranger. Juwon looks down at the gift in his hands, realizing this simple piece of bread is the first bit of humanity he's seen in a long time. Hunger takes over as he begins to eat greedily, finding a tiny moment of relief in the middle of his miserable and humiliating public display for all to see. That small piece is violently interrupted as armored knights storm the village, screaming for the prisoner to come out and face his judgment. A deafening thud echoes through the square as the knights use brute force to make their presence known to everyone nearby. Juwon is violently kicked out of his cage and slammed onto the dirt, leaving him gasping for breath as the impact rattles his bones. Dragging himself through the mud, he lets out a low growl of pure frustration while trying to regain some sense of dignity. Terror spreads as the knights force the villagers to their knees and begin a sudden, bloody execution without a single word of explanation. Fresh blood stains the ground as a knight stands over the victims, holding a cold blade over a list of names to mark his progress. They hold up glowing pieces of paper, using some form of magical detection to verify that they've finally tracked down their intended targets. Juwon lets out a heavy, tired sigh while watching the chaos, clearly drained by the endless cycle of death and magical hunting. The village elder leans in, listening closely as a soldier whispers something to him. It seems they are discussing what to do with their captive. Juwon stares ahead with a hollow expression, looking like he has reached his absolute limit. He is just waiting to see what kind of fresh hell they have planned. Ju-won looks completely drained as the weight of his situation finally sets in. He can barely keep his head up while facing the village's harsh judgment. Sunlight filters through the dense trees on the outskirts of the village. Somewhere nearby, a young mother and her child are trying to survive in peace. They live in a small, weathered wooden cabin tucked away from the main road. It is a modest home, but it provides their only refuge. Inside, a heavy sack of supplies sits on the wooden floorboards. In a place this poor, even a basic bag of grain represents a massive debt. An older woman in a purple dress looms over them with a cold warning. She makes it clear that every bit of help they receive comes with a heavy price later. She mentions a commoner who might be a good match, noting his hands are as soft as a noble. The young mother listens to the news with growing dread. The older lady mentions a potential husband who may look rough, but has the delicate hands of a noble. She insists this commoner is a perfect match. Grabbing her hands, the older woman tells the young mother to relax. Apparently, this man has never struck anyone and is quite gentle despite his appearance. Tears well up in her eyes as she contemplates the life ahead of her. The idea of being forced into a marriage with a complete stranger is almost too much. She quietly admits that she would be perfectly content if the man just left her and her daughter alone in their corner of the house. All she really craves is a bit of peace and privacy for her small family. She doesn't need luxury, just safety from the world outside. As the mother worries about her future, her young daughter sleeps soundly on the floor, unaware of the conversation taking place above her. A sudden and aggressive pounding at the door interrupts their conversation. A voice from the other side demands that she open up the house right this second. Startled by the noise, the mother quickly turns her head toward the door, her hand protectively touching her daughter as she wonders who is visiting at this hour. The door is thrown open, and the village elder stands in the doorway. He has brought someone with him, whose massive frame casts a shadow into the small room. The village elder finally steps inside and announces that he has brought the man she is meant to marry. He seems quite pleased with his new arrangement. The woman cries out in shock, asking why they are dragging a sick man around. She instantly recognizes him as the man she tried to help earlier. Our boy towers over everyone in the small cabin, his presence filling the space. He looks confused by the situation, not realizing he is being presented as a husband. The woman stares up at him, her face pale with shock and fear. Seeing him here in her home is the last thing she ever expected to happen. Ju-won stands awkwardly in the middle of the room, looking down at the woman he previously met. The elder and the older woman watch the pair expectantly. The woman clutches her chest, her hands shaking as she tries to process everything. The tension in the room is high as they stare at each other in silence. Ju-won scans the room with a look of total confusion, wondering why he has been brought here. He is stunned to see the woman from earlier. The old man isn't wasting any time and shoves Ju-won forward toward the woman and her little girl. The atmosphere is beyond awkward as she clutches her chest in disbelief. The village elder isn't interested in a slow introduction and physically maneuvers Ju-won closer to the mother and child, demanding that he stop being hesitant. Ju-won towers over the small family, looking extremely uncomfortable. The elder points aggressively, making it clear that Ju-won is to stay right there. Before either of them can process the situation, the old man reaches out and grabs their hands. He is moving way too fast for anyone's comfort. The elder forces their hands together, physically sealing the arrangement. The mother looks away in distress while Ju-won processes the sudden contact. The elder beams with pride as he declares that they already look like a real couple. Ju-won is sweating bullets while the little girl hides away. A look of shock and realization crosses Ju-won's face as he looks at the mother. Something about this specific situation is triggering a very specific memory. The static in his head intensifies as the memory fades back into the darkness. He can't believe the bizarre request he made might actually be playing out in real life. He suddenly remembers a terrifying, demonic Santa Claus who once promised him a wife with a heart of snow. The memory is as vivid as a nightmare. The static in his head intensifies as the rest of the promise resurfaces. He also requested a beautiful daughter who would respect and follow her father. He looks at the woman and realizes she matches the description of the pure-hearted bride perfectly. It seems his insane wish is actually coming true right now. The little girl stares up in absolute awe, her eyes sparkling with hope. She starts to wonder if the miracles she heard about are actually happening. Juwon stands tall beside the woman and child, looking like a true protector. The little girl clutches the woman's dress, wondering if her secret Santa was real. Juwon is reeling from the fact that his wish was granted in the most extreme way possible. He has been reincarnated into a new world with a ready-made family. Memories of the agonizing transition flood back, reminding him of how frail he used to be. The struggle to survive that transformation was almost more than he could bear. He wonders if this intense suffering was actually necessary for the gift he received. Despite the power, the cost seems far too high for comfort. Frustration boils over as he curses the mysterious figure known as Santa. If they ever cross paths again, things are going to get very ugly for that guy. The anger is visible as it radiates from him like physical heat. He is reaching his absolute breaking point with this entire situation. Juwon stares ahead with murderous intent in his eyes. He makes a silent vow to track down that bastard and end him for good. His terrifying aura is so intense that the locals nearby can practically feel the dark energy. Even the little ones are trembling in fear of this bear-like man. Out in the forest, Juwon finds himself surrounded by 3 local men. They are chattering away in a runic language that makes zero sense to him. It is driving him crazy that he cannot understand a single word they say. The elderly man seems to be the most vocal and aggressive of the bunch. The old man glances back at his companions, perhaps checking their reaction to the stranger. Juwon remains stoic and unreadable throughout the interaction. A blonde villager steps forward and extends his hand for a greeting. Testing the new guy on day 1 is such a classic move. Their hands meet in what looks like a standard introduction. However, the villager clearly has something else in mind besides being polite to the newcomer. A sudden visual effect flashes as their grip tightens. This greeting is quickly turning into a trial of raw power. The villager strains as he tries to crush our boy's hand, but his own arm begins to shake from the effort. He is in for a rude awakening. Juwon wonders if a crushing grip is just how these people say hello. He looks completely bored while the blonde man's face twists in agony. Our boy stares back with a cold, unyielding gaze. He is not about to let some random villager push him around like a weakling. Juwon applies some real pressure, and the blonde guy immediately collapses to the ground. He learns the hard way not to play games with our guy. Instead of being angry, the old man starts clapping with delight. He seems incredibly impressed by the raw power Juwon just displayed. While the blonde guy grovels in pain, the elderly hunter approaches with his bow. Juwon can only stand there and wonder what kind of trial is coming next. Our boy looks down at the weapon, feeling a bit out of his element. He has never actually used one of these before today. Despite his lack of experience, Juwon takes the bow and tries to look the part. He needs to play along to survive this situation. Instructions come in the form of exaggerated movements as the old man tries his best to communicate. He is determined to teach the basics of hunting to the stranger. The old hunter starts hopping around and mimicking a rabbit to teach Juwon how to track prey. It is a ridiculous display, but the man is dead serious about the lesson. Juwon examines the arrow, feeling the weight and tension of the string. He realizes that making an arrow fly straight is harder than it looks on television. The old man spots something in the distance and gets incredibly excited. He starts pointing frantically toward the bushes nearby. He shouts more unintelligible orders, urging Juwon to take the shot immediately. The pressure is on to perform and prove his skills. A small white rabbit sits quietly nearby, munching on some leaves. It has no idea it is currently in the crosshairs of an amateur archer. Our boy starts panicking because he has never even held a bow before. The old man does not seem to care and just keeps shouting. Taking a knee, Juwon mimics the form of Olympic archers he saw on TV. Even if it feels forced, he has to look like he knows what he is doing. He pulls back the string, focusing all his concentration on the tiny target. One shot is all he gets to show these people what he can do. The arrow zips through the air, but it is not even close. The rabbit panics and bolts as the shot sails harmlessly into the distance. He stands there confused while the old man claps like he just saw something amazing. Apparently, just firing the bow was enough to earn some respect. Juwon watches the group depart, still struggling to comprehend the runic speech bubbles appearing above their heads. The woman and child he saw earlier walk by, carrying baskets of supplies. They seem completely oblivious to the archery disaster that just took place. Juwon watches them with a sweat drop on his face. He is still trying to find his footing in this strange land without knowing the language. Stunned silence follows the realization that the beautiful stranger walking past is actually his bride. This sudden marital status is a massive shock to his system. His heart races as he stares, sweat dripping down his face. He cannot believe the hand destiny just dealt him. Things get even weirder as an old man stands nearby, while the woman and child look on with pure confusion. Juwon is just trying to process the atmosphere. They end up sitting together on a white cloth in the middle of a sunlit clearing. A top-down view shows the group gathered for a quiet meal outdoors. It is the most awkward picnic in history. Our boy sits across from his new family, both of them bowing their heads. Truly the peak of awkward first dates. The meal is a simple bowl of stew, filled with chunks of meat and potatoes. It looks hearty, but Juwon is almost too nervous to even take a bite. He starts eating, keeping his eyes down while the woman steals a quick glance at him. Neither of them knows how to break the ice in this situation. Juwon suddenly pauses, catching the woman and child off guard. The little girl cowers slightly, clearly unsure of what this muscular stranger is going to do next. Our boy looks up, his expression hardening into one of intense focus. He is thinking deeply about the massive responsibility that has just been dropped into his lap. A soft smile finally breaks across his face as he looks at them. Even without words, he is trying to show them he is not a threat. Juwon reflects on how the word family always felt foreign to him throughout his life. From middle school until 30, he was always alone. As the woman and her little girl eat their humble meal, Juwon watches them with a heavy heart. He cannot believe he is suddenly responsible for their well-being. He starts to sweat, wondering if the order of how they became a family even matters anymore. Considering the craziness of this world, he just has to roll with it. Our boy leans back and stares at the sky, feeling the weight of his new life. He is exhausted, but he knows he has to step up for his new family. He looks at the system, half wanting to kill the entity responsible for this while also feeling gratitude. This is his life now, like it or not. The following day, the group begins their journey through the dense forest. Things start moving at a frantic pace as they trek deeper into the wilderness. Juwon leads the way, carrying a massive white pack strapped to his back. He keeps a watchful eye on his new companions trailing behind him. The trek is clearly taking its toll on the woman and the little girl. They are both drenched in sweat, gasping for air as they struggle. Seeing them suffer makes Juwon realize he needs to step up. He is built like a literal tank, but they are reaching their physical limits. He knows he has to adapt to this world quickly to survive. The language barrier is frustrating, as he cannot even ask if they are doing okay. Suddenly, his boots grind to a halt on the dirt path. A memory from his past starts to flood back into his mind. He remembers his mother patting his head back then. She told him that when you want to protect someone, you cannot afford to hesitate. Her kind face stays etched in his mind as she gives him the ultimate advice. The moment you feel the urge to protect them, leap into action. Back in the present, Juwon turns around with a newfound look of determination. He is not going to let them suffer through this walk anymore. He marches back toward the woman and child, looming over them with his massive build. The woman looks up, her eyes wide with sudden alarm. The little girl starts to whimper, tears welling up in her large eyes. She is terrified that she has done something wrong to upset him. Juwon drops to one knee, looking the woman in the eyes. He tries to tell her not to be scared, intending to help them carry the burden. The woman freezes in place, her heart pounding against her chest. She has no idea what this powerful man is planning to do. She starts frantically apologizing in a language Juwon cannot understand, pressing her hands together in a desperate plea. She is absolutely terrified of his sudden approach. Seeing the little girl cry breaks Juwon's heart. He realizes his presence is intimidating, but he knows he cannot just leave them to struggle on their own. He stands his ground as the woman cowers and the girl continues to sob. The atmosphere is thick with misunderstanding, but our boy is committed to his plan. With a sudden movement, he reaches out for both of them. It is time for some unconventional problem solving to get them moving again. With a sudden movement, Juwon reaches out and snatches the little girl up first, startling her as she is lifted high off the ground. Before the woman can even react, our guy scoops her up too. He ignores their screams of terror, knowing he is doing this for their own good. Juwon carries both of them with ease, one tucked under each arm like a total beast. He is determined to get his new family through the forest at a faster pace. The woman looks at Juwon with a mix of surprise and growing hope. She is starting to realize that this mysterious man might actually be their protector. Juwon carries both of them like they weigh absolutely nothing. Our boy is a human forklift, moving through the dense woods with total ease. The little girl clings to the sack on his back, her eyes wide with surprise. She is not crying anymore, just trying to process the ride. Our guy moves through the brush, looking for the best path forward. He is determined to get them away from whatever dangers might be lingering in these woods. He tells the woman to hold on tight as they navigate the rough terrain. His focus is entirely on keeping them safe and stable. He realizes that even with all their luggage, they are incredibly light. It makes him wonder just how much they have been struggling lately. Our guy decides he needs to learn their language and start hunting immediately. He wants to make sure they have plenty of meat to eat. The woman watches him closely as he walks. Her initial fear is starting to fade, replaced by a quiet, watchful curiosity about her savior. Beads of sweat roll down Juwon's neck as the physical toll of the journey starts to set in. He is pushing himself to the limit. She reaches out and brushes against him, perhaps checking if he is okay. The small contact feels heavy with unspoken emotion in the quiet woods. Juwon flinches slightly, clearly surprised by the touch. He is more comfortable with heavy lifting than he is with soft gestures. She looks away with a somber expression. The weight of her past seems to be catching up to her even in this moment of rescue. They finally arrive at a small clearing where an elderly man is waiting. It looks like this is where their journey ends for today. Juwon bows deeply to the old man and thanks him for showing them the way. He knows how important it is to show respect here. The elder simply turns and walks away without saying a word. He has finished his task, leaving the small family to their new home. Our boy looks up at the rustic wooden structure. It is not much, but it is a roof over their heads and a place to hide. A dark memory flashes through Juwon's mind, showing a man trapped in heavy iron shackles. This haunting past is clearly the reason he values his freedom so much now. A cold breeze hits him, making him shiver. Juwon has always hated the cold, and this mountain air is already starting to bite. He pushes the door open, ready to get everyone inside and out of the wind. This is the start of their new life together. He steps inside and lets out confused sound. The interior is not exactly what he expected to find waiting for them. This cabin is probably going to be even colder than his old room. He looks at the woman, realizing they are in for a rough time. He wants to ask if she is okay, but the language barrier makes things difficult. This communication gap is really starting to sting. Before he can even say a word, she suddenly bolts. She pushes past him and runs out into the forest like her life depends on it. Juwon stands in the doorway, completely baffled by her sudden escape. He worked so hard to bring her here, only for her to flee. The woman is spiraling into deep despair as she runs. Her thoughts are a messy blur of fear and hopelessness. She collapses on the ground, sobbing because looters took everything while she was in the village. The shelves are empty and her tools are gone. She wonders how she will ever survive the coming winter without her bow or arrows. She cannot even repair the house anymore. Juwon eventually finds her sitting alone in the grass. He approaches slowly and asks if this is where she has been hiding. He sits down beside her, giving her the space she needs to breathe. He is not going to force her to go back yet. Our boy reaches out and places a hand on her head. It is a simple, gentle gesture meant to provide some much-needed comfort. She freezes as he strokes her hair. This unexpected kindness is almost too much for her to handle after everything she has lost. She looks up at him, wondering if he is trying to tell her not to worry. His steady gaze is far more reassuring than any words. Gazing into his warm eyes, she starts to realize that this stranger is the only person she can truly depend on as they begin their difficult life together on this mountain. She worries because they cannot communicate at all. Plus, he does not even seem to know how to hunt for their survival. Can they really survive together in a place as harsh as this mountain? The uncertainty of the future hangs heavy over them both. Juwon offered a subtle, gentle smile. Even without words, his expression carried a sincerity that cut right through her fear. Our boy promised to protect her, his eyes filled with warmth. Despite her anxiety, she found comfort as he gently cupped her face. Juwon wipes a stray tear from her face as they share a quiet, emotional moment under the trees. She feels an overwhelming sense of relief despite the uncertain future. Their quiet moment was captured in the reflection of a falling droplet. For a brief second, the harsh reality faded away, replaced by hope. As he sits in the golden grass, Juwon thinks back to his life in the original world where he was always alone. He reaches out to Lizzie, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder as the sound of the wind fills the field. Looking at her, he realizes that now that he has a family, there is no hardship he cannot endure. While our boy watches with a soft expression, Lizzie struggles to hold back her rising emotions. He continues to comfort her as she finally lets out a sob, unaware that they are being watched. Suddenly, the little blonde girl comes charging across the field, screaming for Juwon to leave Lizzie alone. She lunges forward to protect her friend, acting like a tiny shield to keep our boy away. Eventually, the three of them sit together in the grass, as the tension of the misunderstanding finally starts to fade. Clear up. Lizzie stares down at the ground, her eyes still filled with heavy, shimmering tears from the emotional release. He thinks back to their first meeting, recalling how Lizzie offered him food when he was at his lowest point. Our boy pulls both girls into a tight hug, swearing that he will never allow them to shed tears again. Juwon commits to his new life, hoping that neither of them will ever regret becoming part of his family. After the emotional breakdown in the fields, they head back to their small wooden home nestled in the woods. Once inside, the group settles onto the floor, though the atmosphere remains heavy with an awkward silence. Juwon sighs as he realizes that they have basically returned to square one, despite their recent bonding moment. Looking at them, he feels slight relief that they finally seem wary instead of being completely terrified. Despite the lingering tension, our boy knows he needs to make a move to bridge the gap between them. Taking a deep breath, he suddenly scoots forward, startling the poor girls with his sudden energetic movement. He points a finger at his own chest and proudly declares his full name for them to hear. He points to his chest and clearly introduces himself to the two of them as Kim Juwon. Our guy explains that even if they can't communicate yet, they should at least know each other's names. Lizzie looks surprised by his sudden introduction and stares at him with wide, curious brown eyes. She realizes he is just trying to be friendly and eventually decides to reach out to him in return. The young woman prepares to speak, her expression softening as she looks at him with newfound trust. Hearing her name for the first time, our guy gives her a warm compliment and a friendly smile. When our boy reaches out to greet the blonde girl, she flinches and looks at him with wide, terrified eyes. Clearly, she is not used to people being kind to her. When Juwon reaches out toward the child, she tenses up and looks at him with a nervous expression. The little girl stares up at him with massive, shimmering eyes, trying to process this strange man's kindness. Seeing the child's silence, Juwon starts to get nervous and worries that he might have accidentally scared her again. He decides to be bold and reaches out to gently stroke the golden hair of their youngest companion. Watching her reaction, he is suddenly reminded of a classic story about a girl who went on a grand adventure. Juwon tells her she'll become a lovely child, just like the girl from a famous story about many adventures. He imagines the child going on a grand adventure with many loyal friends, just like the girl from Oz. He promises the girl that her name will lead her to a future filled with many wonderful friends. Seeing her beam with such pure joy makes him feel like all his effort was finally worth it. High above, the clouds are painted with the warm colors of the setting sun as the long day finally ends. Determined to provide for his new family, Juwon heads out to the yard to start splitting logs for the fire. Watching from the safety of the foliage, Lizzie wonders how such a powerful man can have such a kind heart. Lizzie watches him from behind a tree, unable to wrap her head around how someone like him can be so gentle despite his obvious strength. Even though Juwon has a much bigger body and hands than that dead man, he treats her kindly. He never uses his strength to cause her any pain. She's never met anyone like him before. As she watches him work, a soft blush creeps onto her face while she processes these new and confusing feelings. But her expression quickly turns solemn. Deep down, she is still haunted by the ghosts of her past and the pain she had to endure for so long. Seeing Ju-won's warm face is like waking up from a nightmare. His gentle expression makes all those painful memories of her lonely past finally start to fade away. As she watches him stand tall among the trees, she realizes he possesses an aura far too great for a simple village life. He truly doesn't seem to belong in a place like this. Suddenly, he notices her watching and waves her over with a huge, friendly grin. He calls out her name so naturally that she can barely process the sudden interaction. Surprised eyes reveal just how stunned she is by his casual warmth. She is still getting used to being acknowledged so kindly by anyone, let alone a man like him. While looking at him, her mind hones in on the specific color of his hair and eyes. Those dark features remind her of something she heard recently. She focuses on the rumor that she heard. Country at war supposedly succeeded in summoning a hero. People are talking all over the place about the legendary hero. The enemy nation is apparently in a celebratory mood, since the ritual actually worked. It's incredible to think that a legendary hero with black hair and eyes actually exists. As Ju-won walks toward her, Lizzie can't help but notice how closely he matches that description. She stares at him intensely, noting the similar physical features. The brown-haired girl watches him closely, trying to convince herself that a legendary hero would never be living such humble life. She thinks he is just an ordinary guy. Lizzie tells herself it's just a rumor. As he approaches, she is struck by his height and presence. She studies his features up close and notices his hair is actually deep brown instead of black. This small detail helps settle her nerves, making him feel less like a myth. When she looks even closer, she realizes his hair is actually more of a deep brown. That settles it. He definitely isn't the hero from the legends. A wave of relief washes over her, and she lets out a long breath she didn't even know she was holding. Even so, being this close to him makes her incredibly flustered. She tries to compose herself before he notices how red her face has become. Seeing her so flustered, Ju-won reaches out to give her a reassuring pat on the head. He wants her to know she's safe and doesn't need to be so nervous around him. This sudden affection feels completely alien to her. She realizes she has absolutely no idea how to react to someone treating her with such effortless tenderness. Her eyes well up with tears as his hand approaches her face, her body instinctively bracing for a blow. She is stunned when he chooses to show her gentle affection instead. A close-up of his hand gently patting her head. The touch is light and rhythmic. She closes her eyes and enjoys the sensation. It feels nice. She looks up at him with wide, longing eyes, wishing he would never stop. Feeling the soft texture of her hair under his hand, Ju-won finds himself getting caught up in the mood. A heavy blush starts to spread across his own face. Looking into her eyes, he sees a vulnerability that makes his heart race. The silence between them is no longer awkward, but filled with a strange, romantic tension. In a sudden burst of romantic tension, Ju-won pulls her close and leans in for a deep kiss. The girl is completely caught off guard as the autumn leaves swirl around them. A close-up shows Ju-won's eyes widening in shock as he realizes what he's doing. The physical contact is so unexpected that Lizzie's brain completely stops working. She turns into a literal block of ice, too shocked to even move a single muscle. Sweat starts pouring down his face as he realizes just how far he overstepped. He is completely short-circuited by the sudden intimacy of the kiss he just initiated. After that spicy moment, our guy is totally short-circuited and grabs a wooden bucket to make a quick escape. He needs some distance before he completely loses his cool. Desperate for any excuse to leave, he tightens his grip on the handle until his knuckles turn white. He has to get out of there before he dies of pure embarrassment. Without another word, he turns tail and sprints into the thick forest. He is running so fast it looks like his life depends on getting away. Steam practically starts rising from her head as she processes what just happened. She's left standing alone in the woods, her heart hammering wildly inside her chest. Our guy trudges away, feeling like the biggest idiot on the planet. He wonders if she thinks he's some kind of creep for being so forward after only just meeting her. Ju-won groans and clutches his head in embarrassment. He can hardly believe he just did that. He continues his walk, sweating and looking flustered as he tries to process the moment. He suddenly stops in his tracks, his boots standing still on the forest floor. His boots come to a sudden halt in the thick grass. Something feels off about his surroundings, and he finally stops to pay attention. A sudden sound pierces the silence of the forest, causing him to tense up immediately. The wind howls through the trees, carrying with it a sense of impending danger that chills him to the bone. His eyes widen in shock as his senses scream at him, signaling a threat he hadn't noticed until now. A cold shiver runs down his spine as he feels an overwhelming, murderous aura directed right at him. He slowly turns around, only to find a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at him from the darkness. The creature lets out a deep, guttural growl that vibrates in Ju-won's chest. Those massive fangs look sharp enough to tear through armor like paper. Panic sets in as he finally recognizes the predator staring him down. He never expected to encounter a monster of this magnitude so close to home. His brain manages to process one single terrifying thought. This is a wolf, and it is way bigger than any normal animal should be. Ju-won is out in the woods when he comes face to face with a massive wolf. This thing has glowing red eyes and looks like it hasn't eaten in weeks. Our boy is absolutely terrified. He drops to the ground, his heart racing, and desperately scans his surroundings for anything he can use to defend himself. His fingers brush against a heavy wooden beam. He grips it with everything he has, his knuckles turning white as his survival instincts finally kick into high gear. The beast lets out a deafening growl that shakes the very trees. Ju-won stands his ground, holding that piece of wood like his life depends on it. Before he can even blink, the wolf lunges and sinks its massive fangs right into the wood. The force of the impact nearly knocks him off his feet. He manages to evade the wolf's bite at the very last second, rolling across the forest floor as the creature's teeth snap empty air. Ju-won refuses to be prey today. He roars back at the monster, throwing his weight forward as he prepares a desperate counterattack. He manages to land a solid blow right against the wolf's snout. It is a desperate move, but it is enough to make the creature recoil for a split second. The wolf is not backing down, though. Ju-won curses as he realizes the monster's teeth are stuck deep in the timber, leaving them locked in a deadly struggle. Our boy finds an opening and slams his body into the wolf. He is using every ounce of strength he has to push the predator back into the shadows. Suddenly, something shifts inside him. Ju-won's eyes begin to glow with a strange blue light as he winds up for a punch that feels heavier than anything before. He connects with a devastating blow that sends the wolf reeling. The impact is so powerful that it creates a shock wave, but the fight is far from over. Ju-won suddenly screams out in agony. It feels like his entire body's being consumed by an internal fire, and the pain is unlike anything he has ever experienced. As Ju-won screams, the wolf whimpers and recoils. A strange, blinding light begins to emanate from the boy's arm, catching the predator off guard. Pure flames erupt right from Ju-won's arm, scorching the wolf's fur and face. He stares in utter disbelief as he realizes he is literally manifesting fire. Our boy is frozen in shock, watching the embers dance around his skin. He can feel the heat radiating off his arm, yet somehow he is not being burned. He channels a wild, burning power through his arms to wrestle the giant wolf. The monster lets out a pained howl as the searing heat begins to overwhelm it. With his fists still wreathed in flames, he starts raining down blows on the creature. Every strike leaves a mark, and the wolf can do nothing but take it. It is a complete beatdown. Ju-won screams as he pummels the wolf into the dirt, his newly awakened power turning him into a force of nature. Finally, the wolf stops moving. It lies there in the grass, defeated and smoking from the intensity of the flames our boy just unleashed on it. After the brutal struggle, Ju-won gasps for air over the remains of his kill. The silence of the forest returns, leaving him alone with his racing heart. He collapses onto the grass, staring up at the canopy while panting heavily. He keeps replaying the moment his arm caught fire over and over in his head. Upon closer inspection, he realizes something bizarre. Despite the intense heat, his clothes are completely untouched, and he finds not a single burn mark on the fabric. Our boy sits up and rubs his face, trying to process the impossible. He has read about stuff like this in stories, but reality is different. He thinks about people falling into other worlds and gaining powers. He recalls stories where heroes use their strength to stop corrupt soldiers from executing innocent people. If he really does have magic, then everything is about to change. He looks at his hand, wondering if he can summon that power again on command. He reaches toward the sky, focusing all his mental energy on that feeling of heat. It is time to see if that fire was a fluke. He shouts the name of a fireball spell at the top of his lungs. He tries it over and over, expecting a massive explosion to appear. When that doesn't work, he tries calling for a firewall next. He's waving his arms around like a madman in the middle of the empty forest. Absolute silence. Not even a spark appears. The dead wolf is the only witness to his very embarrassing attempt at being a powerful sorcerer. He looks completely defeated, realizing magic doesn't just work because you shout its name. This is going to be way harder than he thought. Juwon sighs and leans back, coming to terms with his situation. He might have power, but he has zero idea how to actually control it yet. He remembers why he's doing all of this. He wants to provide a better environment and food to make his family much happier. He imagines a future where he and Lizzie are sitting around a table with their little girl. That simple dream of happiness keeps him going. He lies back on the grass, his mind racing. He needs to figure out how to summon that flame again if he's going to protect his family. Our boy stands up and starts walking back through the woods. He needs to take a step back and process the incredible power he just discovered. After all, he knows that history has a very nasty habit of repeating itself if you are not careful. Juwon remembers the darkest days of his past. After his parents passed, his grandfather was the only one he had left until he too was taken away. At the funeral, his relatives did not offer any comfort. Instead, they lashed out, physically attacking him and screaming that everything was his fault. They blamed his very presence for the deaths in the family. They claimed that living with him was a curse that killed his father and brother. A dark memory resurfaces of a funeral where everyone turned their backs on him. They pointed fingers and blamed his existence for the tragedy that struck their family. The weight of those heavy memories still lingers in his mind. But he cannot let the past hold him back anymore. Back in the present, he pushes those ghosts away. He has a new family now, and he refuses to let them suffer the same fate. He reaches down and grabs the thick fur of the defeated beast. It is time to finally bring home the prize. With a massive grunt, our boy hoists the giant wolf onto his shoulders. The weight is incredible, but his resolve is even stronger. He starts the long trek back to the village. This kill represents more than just meat. It is proof that he can protect his own. Under the glow of the full moon, he carries the massive wolf carcass back home. He thinks about how proud a loved one would be to see his strength now. He adjusts the heavy load, sweat dripping down his face. He needs to get home before the night gets any deeper. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Lizzie is busy preparing their modest home. Little Dorothy is wandering around, perfectly safe and unaware of any danger. Lizzie gives a warm smile as the little girl approaches. The atmosphere is peaceful, but that quiet is about to be shattered. She reaches out and gently pats Dorothy on the head. They are just waiting for Juwon to return, hoping he is all right. Dorothy beams with pure, innocent joy. She has no idea what her father has been through out in those dark woods. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes from outside. Dorothy perks up, hearing something near the window, and goes to investigate. The little girl stands on her tiptoes to peek through the opening. She is expecting to see her father, but what greets her is terrifying. Her eyes go wide as she stares out into the darkness. Something massive is right there on the other side of the glass. The giant, lifeless head of the wolf looms in the window. Dorothy lets out a blood-curdling scream that echoes through the house. Lizzie nearly jumps out of her skin. She hears her daughter screaming and immediately panics, fearing the worst has come for them. Instinct takes over. Lizzie grabs a sharp kitchen knife from the table, her knuckles turning white as she prepares to fight. She charges toward the door, shouting for Dorothy to stay back. She is ready to face whatever monster has found their home. Her heart pounds against her ribs as she bursts outside. Her eyes scan the shadows, searching for the threat. She spots Juwon struggling to stay upright under the crushing weight of the massive beast he's brought back. He's clearly pushed himself to the absolute limit. Lizzie screams out in terror, thinking her husband is being mauled. She does not realize the beast is already dead. Juwon finally lets the carcass slide off his shoulders. It hits the ground with a heavy thud, and he slumps over, completely spent. Lizzie and Dorothy rush toward him, still terrified. They see the size of the creature and cannot believe their eyes. Shock washes over her as she realizes Juwon actually managed to take down a monster of this size all on his own. Finally, The terror fades. The knife slips from her trembling fingers and clatters onto the grass. The sheer relief is absolutely overwhelming. She drops to her knees and grabs Juwon, checking his face for injuries. She is desperate to make sure he is really okay. Dorothy is sobbing, clinging to his leg as if she is afraid he might disappear. The sight of the beast was too much. Our boy pulls them both close, trying to soothe their fears. He tells them not to worry and promises everything is fine. Lizzie buries her face in his chest, weeping with joy. Juwon just holds her, realizing how much they truly need him. Lizzie clings to him, her face buried in his chest, while she repeats that she is just so glad he is safe. Juwon realizes she is saying those words over and over. Little Dorothy is just as shaken, sobbing that she was so worried about him. Our boy pulls them both into a tight embrace, swearing he will never make them cry like this again. The morning sun finally breaks through the clouds, marking the end of a long and terrifying night for the trio. A lone crow perches on the roof as the forest falls silent. The immediate danger has passed, but there is still plenty of work left for our guy to handle. Juwon gets straight to business, hauling the massive wolf carcass onto a table to begin the skinning process. He needs to make use of every part of this beast. He carefully slides his blade through the thick hide, making sure not to damage the valuable pelt underneath. It is gruesome work, but necessary for their survival. Our boy tosses a large piece of the dark fur aside, frustrated that doing this all by himself is taking way longer than he originally expected. He stops for a moment to wipe the sweat from his brow, feeling the exhaustion deep in his muscles. Butchering a monster of this size is a serious workout. Focusing on the rhythmic motion of his knife helps him clear his head as he continues to break down the massive haul. This meat will be their salvation. As he works, a shadow falls across the floor of the shed. Lizzie appears in the doorway, her silhouette framed against the bright light outside. Juwon hears her footsteps and quickly looks back, wondering what she needs while he is right in the middle of this mess. He calls out her name as she approaches, noticing that she is carrying a heavy wooden bucket in her arms. She has come to help him with the harvest. Lizzie sets the bucket down and looks up at him with a gentle smile. She tells our guy that he should go ahead and start loading the fresh meat into the container. She points at the bucket and mimics putting food inside, making sure he understands her plan. Our protagonist realizes she is trying her best to be useful despite the language barrier. Our boy pauses, racking his brain to remember the specific word for thank you in this world's language. He wants to show his appreciation for her help. He awkwardly stammers out the word, his face heating up as he tries to get the pronunciation right. Lizzie looks back at him, clearly surprised by his effort. The village girl can't help but smile after hearing his attempt at her language. She seems genuinely charmed by his effort, even if he is acting a bit awkward around her. She cannot help but giggle at how flustered our guy looks. Juwon just stands there scratching his head, wondering if he accidentally said something embarrassing instead. Lizzie looks up at him and repeats the word for thanks, her voice filled with warmth. It seems like his message got through perfectly after all. They stand close together in the quiet clearing, the tension from the wolf attack finally starting to fade away. Our guy looks down at her and smiles, saying the word clearly this time. Their bond is growing stronger every day, even without many words. Lizzie looks absolutely stunned as she stands near our boy. It is clear that whatever just happened has left her completely speechless and blushing like crazy. Getting a simple thank you is enough to send her head spinning. She is not used to this kind of kindness at all. Receiving a simple thank you leaves Lizzie completely stunned. She realizes that no one in her own family has ever shown her this much genuine appreciation before. All she did was bring him a water bottle, but to her, his reaction felt like so much more. She smiles softly while helping him with the wooden bucket. Every moment spent with this man brings a brand new experience Lizzie has never felt before. Her whole world is changing one step at a time. She starts imagining what it would feel like to finally share a real kiss with him. Just the thought of touching lips is enough to make her heart skip a beat. Lizzie follows our boy toward the cabin, feeling incredibly embarrassed but still curious. She cannot help but wonder if he has ever been this close to other women before. A shadow of doubt crosses her mind as she wonders if other girls felt the same fluttering heart when they were around him. Lizzie looks a bit downcast, her eyes reflecting a mix of love and uncertainty. Her heart is fluttering so much she feels like she might actually cry. Inside the cabin, Juwon gets straight to work, handling heavy chores with ease. Lizzie watches him, still trying to process her swirling emotions. Juwon insists on handling the heavy lifting, which totally confuses Lizzie. She thinks it is strange because women are usually expected to handle these domestic chores alone. Lizzie helps him move the fresh meat, but she is still stuck on why he acts like this is something he is naturally supposed to do. Their hands almost touch as they work over the bucket. Lizzie freezes up, her eyes wide as the tension between them starts to climb again. Our guy leans in close, and Lizzie starts panicking internally. She is worried that her heart is beating so loud he might actually hear it. Thinking another big moment is coming, Lizzie tightly shuts her eyes and waits for the impact. She is ready for whatever happens next. Just as Lizzie braces herself for something intense, Juwon surprises her with a gentle forehead kiss. It is a moment of pure, unexpected tenderness for her. Instead of what she expected, our boy gently plants a kiss right on her forehead. It is a sweet gesture that catches her completely off guard. Lizzie snaps her eyes open and calls him an idiot, looking totally flustered. She is frustrated because she totally misread the moment and closed her eyes for nothing. Both of them are left feeling incredibly awkward and shy after that intimate moment. Lizzie cannot help but blush as she tries to process his sudden affection. She starts overthinking everything, wondering if she looked like someone who was desperately expecting a kiss on the lips. It is pure internal chaos. Our boy steps back in, not letting her stay mad for long. He leans down again, looking much more serious this time around. This time, Lizzie is determined not to close her eyes, so there is no chance for another misunderstanding. She wants to see exactly what he is doing. Juwon finally goes for it and kisses her straight on the lips. Lizzie is so shocked her eyes stay wide open through the whole thing. As they pull apart, our boy gives her a soft smile. It is the kind of look that makes all her previous worries just melt away. Suddenly, Lizzie freezes as she catches a glimpse of someone standing at the door. Juwon doesn't notice a thing as he prepares to head out with his bucket. Lizzie realizes Dorothy saw the entire kiss. The little blonde girl is just standing there with a blank expression, having witnessed the whole romantic moment. Panic fully sets in, and Lizzie bolts out of the room at top speed. Dorothy watches her fly past while Juwon looks on, completely baffled. Lizzie walks deep into the forest to clear her head while the others follow slowly. She is too flustered to even look back at them right now. Juwon carries the heavy bucket while Dorothy walks right by his side. The little girl reaches out to grab his vest, keeping close to her dad. Our boy looks down at her and gives a big, hearty laugh. He seems to be in a great mood after everything that just happened. Dorothy looks up at him with those big yellow eyes, clearly happy to be spending time helping him with the chores. Juwon thanks Dorothy for all her help today, and she looks absolutely thrilled to be included. He is really trying his best to keep his family smiling. Dorothy gives a giant, toothy grin and nods happily. She is clearly enjoying this peaceful day out in the woods with her father. Later on, Lizzie is found kneeling on the floor, carefully tending to a massive pile of dark fur. She seems focused on getting the job done right. Juwon sits back and watches her, wondering why she decided to dry that smelly hide inside the house instead of taking it outdoors. Our boy has a sudden realization. He finally understands the weight of what is happening around him as he watches his family work. He watches Lizzie tend to the wolf skin and realizes how valuable this item really is to her. It's clearly more than just fur to this family. Dorothy is fascinated by the massive wolf skin and reaches out to touch it. Lizzie watches closely, making sure the little girl stays safe while exploring. With a curious look, Dorothy reaches out and pokes the wolf's nose. She is absolutely fearless when it comes to exploring new things. The room fills with laughter as the two of them share a light-hearted moment. It is exactly the kind of peace Juwon wants to protect. Our boy watches them with a warm, satisfied smile. Seeing his family this happy makes every struggle he faced today feel worth it. Outside, the small house sits nestled in the quiet woods. It is a humble life, but it is finally starting to feel like home for them. Lizzie gets to work preparing some fresh meat for their next meal. She carefully handles the thick steaks in a large wooden bowl. Juwon watches her technique closely from across the room. He realizes this is the specific process they use to pickle meat and make it last. She looks genuinely thrilled to have the animal fat to work with. Juwon is relieved he had the foresight to save every part of the hunt. Our boy grows serious as he thinks about their future. He knows he needs to learn the ways of this world quickly to survive. Mastering the concepts of wealth and trade is his next big goal. He wants to know exactly how to exchange goods to provide for them. Juwon decides he needs to understand the local economy to better provide for his new family. He prepares to head out and learn the ropes of trading. His sudden movement startles Lizzie. She looks up from her work, wondering where he is going in such a hurry this time. Lizzie is startled by his sudden exit and immediately tries to follow him out the door. He stops her with a firm look, insisting that she stays behind to rest while he handles the chores. He gives her a reassuring look and shakes his head. He wants her to relax and stay inside while he takes care of the heavy lifting. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he promises not to overdo it. He tells her not to worry because he has everything under control. Lizzie watches him leave, still a bit concerned for him. Our boy heads back into the forest with a clear objective in mind. He finds a cluster of trees and decides this is the perfect spot for some logging practice. Time to see what he can really do. He knows oak makes the best firewood, but realizes he cannot identify it. Still, he trusts his raw strength to get the job done. Our boy winds up and delivers a powerful strike with his axe. He is putting his full weight and effort into every single swing. The blade bites deep into the wood with a satisfying thud. He is determined to master this new skill through sheer hard work. Things don't go quite as planned as he struggles with the stubborn trunk. It turns out logging is a lot harder than it looks. He ends up looking completely drained and a bit embarrassed by his lack of technique. Talk about a major reality check. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, the woods grow quiet. The long day of labor is finally drawing to a close. Juwon trudges back home with a massive basket of firewood strapped to his back. He looks like he is about to collapse from exhaustion. Lizzie and Dorothy are waiting at the door, looking absolutely horrified by his state. They weren't expecting him to push himself this hard. Holding the massive basket inside, our boy looks like he's about to drop from sheer exhaustion. Lizzie quickly reaches for his hand, her eyes filled with concern as she realizes how much he overexerted himself. Our boy drops the heavy load and sinks to the floor. He is panting for breath after that grueling workout in the forest. Lizzie immediately grabs his hands, her face filled with worry. She is checking for blisters or injuries from the rough wooden axe handle. Juwon tries to give her a weak smile as she holds his hands tight. Dorothy watches them, wondering how she can help her tired dad. Suddenly, the little girl turns around and sprints toward the back of the room. She seems to have a plan of her own. She reaches into a bucket of cool water and splashes her tiny hands inside. She is taking matters into her own hands. Dorothy runs back as fast as her little legs can carry her, dripping water all over the floor in her excitement. Little Dorothy suddenly smacks her freezing hands onto Juwon's chest, catching him completely off guard. Everyone freezes in shock as they witness her unique and chilly way of helping him cool down. Juwon let out a shocked laugh as the icy water hit his skin. Dorothy was just trying to help, but she definitely gave him a wake-up call he did not expect. Lizzie could not help but giggle at the sight of her soaking wet husband. Our boy just sat there, dripping and stunned, but he could not stay mad at that face. Little Dorothy stared up with those big yellow eyes, wondering if she did a good job. She looked so innocent that any frustration Juwon felt melted away instantly. Our boy reached out and gently patted her blonde hair. He thanked her for the help, giving her a warm smile that let her know everything was okay. Feeling like a hero, Dorothy turned around and bolted toward the kitchen. Juwon and Lizzie watched her go, stunned by the sheer energy of their little girl. Lizzie burst into another fit of laughter while Juwon tried to wipe himself off. It was a chaotic mess, but the house felt livelier than it had in years. They shared a genuine moment of joy, leaning into each other as the laughter died down. For a moment, all the stress of the day just vanished into thin air. A peaceful silence settles over the small house as night finally takes hold of the forest. The long, hectic day is over, leaving the family to enjoy the quiet safety of their home. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, signaling that dinner was finally ready. Inside, the warmth of the hearth kept the evening chill at bay. Dinner was a quiet affair because Dorothy had already tuckered herself out. The poor thing was fast asleep on the floor before she could even finish her meal. Juwon and Lizzie looked down at their daughter with matching expressions of endearment. She had worked just as hard as her father today in her own little way. Dorothy was out cold, her breathing steady and deep. She looked so peaceful lying there that they did not have the heart to wake her up just yet. Our boy and Lizzie shared a quiet smile across the table. They did not need words to understand how lucky they felt to have this little family together. Carefully, Juan knelt down and scooped Dorothy into his arms. He moved with incredible gentleness, making sure not to disturb her sweet dreams as he stood up. While Lizzie gathered the spoons and bowls, Juan held their daughter close. It was a simple, domestic scene that felt more rewarding than any battle or quest. He carried her across the room toward the warm, inviting bed. The firelight flickered against the walls, casting long shadows as he walked with his precious cargo. Our boy laid her down softly and pulled the blanket up to her chin. He lingered for a second, watching her sleep, wanting to keep her smiling forever. A small candle flickered on the wooden sill, providing a soft glow to the corner of the room while shadows danced against the walls. Back in the kitchen, Lizzie was busy wringing out a cloth in a pot of hot water. She was determined to finish her chores before calling it a night. Juan walked up behind her, his footsteps silent on the wooden floor. He watched her work for a moment, his gaze filled with a quiet intensity. Suddenly, he reached out and gently caught her hand, stopping her in the middle of her task. Lizzie froze, her heart skipping a beat at the unexpected touch. They turned to face each other, both of them blushing in the dim light. Lizzie looked up at him, her breath hitching as she saw the look in his eyes. Outside, the world was bathed in moonlight as the two of them shared a tender embrace. Through the window, they were a picture of domestic peace, alone in the silence of the forest. Lizzie leans in close to Juan, her face flushing as she looks up at him. She's trying to muster her courage for what comes next. Lizzie's hand reaches up to the back of Juan's neck as she tries to find the strength to continue. Lizzie tells herself she must not be shy, because this is naturally what a wife is supposed to do for her husband. Her hand slips inside his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin as the tension between them builds. Lizzie pulls back suddenly, looking a bit flustered, while Juan just watches her with a calm and amused expression. Our boy gives her a gentle, knowing smile that only makes Liz's heart race faster. Lizzie is absolutely mortified and can hardly look him in the eye. She tries to hide her blushing face while stuttering about how embarrassed she still feels. Juan reaches out to stop her from hiding and pulls her back toward him, his eyes never leaving hers. He whispers something softly in her ear, and Lizzie gasps as her face turns a deep shade of red. The two of them walk deeper into the room together, leaving the rest of the world behind for the night. Lizzie ends up pinned against the surface as the soft light of a lantern flickers beside them. Juan gazes down at her with intense affection, and the silence is filled with unspoken promises. Lizzie reaches up to touch his hair, finally letting go of her hesitations as she accepts this intimate moment. She lets out a soft breath, a small and happy smile finally playing on her lips. They gaze into each other's eyes, the quiet room filled only with the sound of their breathing. They share a deep, passionate kiss in the dim light, surrounded by the quiet stillness of the room. Lizzie thinks back to a sleeping child, praying that at least these two will be safe and happy together. In a strange vision, she watches a figure dressed as Santa and begs him not to take her family away. She reflects on how people in grand mansions with many rooms and butlers probably wouldn't understand the life of a commoner. In a commoner's home, every child grows up sharing the same small sleeping space as their parents. Lizzie remembers lying awake as a child, clutching her blankets while trying to block out the sounds of the night. She recalls the harsh voice of her father, who threatened to give her something to really cry about. In the shadows of her memory, Lizzie hid under the covers while her parents spent their nights together. The whimpering of her mother lasted until the break of dawn, leaving young Lizzie trembling in fear. Lizzie wondered when her nights would finally be peaceful, terrified that her mother's suffering would become her own future. The crackling of the fire serves as a bridge back to the waking world. Lizzie blinks her eyes open, slowly returning to the reality of the present moment. The crackling sound of firewood in the fireplace is what eventually woke her up. She is confused to find herself in bed, because she was sure she fell asleep on the floor earlier. Lizzie looks over at Juan, realizing he must have carried her to the bed while she was sleeping. She sees the little girl sleeping soundly beside her, looking completely safe and at peace. A wave of relief washes over her, because the nights she knew between a husband and wife weren't this sweet. Lizzie realizes her whole world has been changing for the better ever since she met this man. Gazing at Juan's peaceful face from so close, Lizzie feels her heart skip a beat. She realizes that being tucked against his chest is exactly where she belongs. As he pulls her closer in his sleep, Lizzie realizes she has finally found the safety she always wanted. Lizzie feels her heart hammering against her ribs while she rests in Juwon's arms. This kind of peace is something she never thought she'd find. She cannot stop herself from smiling as a warm, tingly feeling spreads through her chest. Her whole world is finally starting to change. The three of them sleep soundly together, looking like a real family for the first time. It is a moment of pure, uninterrupted safety. Our boy eventually wakes up as the morning sun fills the room. He looks down at the girl beside him, feeling glad they all made it through the night. Juwon sits up and carefully tucks the blanket around the sleeping child. He wants to make sure she stays warm while he starts the day. He gently strokes her hair, noticing how peaceful she looks when she is not running for her life. She is so tired that she barely even stirs. Lizzie heads out to the kitchen to start the morning chores. She is carrying a heavy bucket across the floor when she feels someone approaching from behind. A strong hand suddenly reaches out and takes the weight off her arms. Juwon is right there, ready to take over the heavy work. Lizzie turns around with a surprised look, finding our guy standing right over her. He gives her a soft smile, clearly wanting to help her out. Juwon rolls up his sleeves and gets to work dumping a heavy bucket of water. He is focused on helping out with the chores to make things easier. Juwon looks at her with a serious but kind expression. He seems to be admiring how hard she works for their little makeshift family. Lizzie starts to blush as her heart begins to race all over again. She wonders why a simple look from him can make her feel so flustered. Our boy asks her what is wrong, but Lizzie is too embarrassed to even look at him. She just covers her mouth and tries to hide. Juwon starts to wonder if he did something to upset her. He thinks back to the way he addressed her and worries he might have been too informal. He wonders if calling her wife or honey is what caused this reaction. Our boy is a bit dense when it comes to romance, bless him. He decides to ask her directly what she would prefer. He wants to know if she wants him to keep calling her Lizzie or something more personal. Lizzie blushes deeply and asks him to call her dear instead. This request is so bold that she can barely stand to look at him. Juwon lets out a playful laugh, finding her reaction absolutely adorable. Lizzie hides her face again, unable to handle his teasing. As she turns away, our boy cannot resist messing with her just a little bit more. He watches her back with a mischievous glint in his eyes. He reaches out and pokes her back, making her flinch in surprise. It is a sweet and playful moment between the two of them. The little girl sits up with a start, letting out a small gasp as she wakes up. She looks around the room, rubbing her eyes. She must have been dreaming about food because she starts imagining a giant piece of flying meat. Her stomach is definitely leading the way this morning. She looks around the room with a dazed expression. Her brain is still half asleep, but the promise of breakfast is starting to wake her up. The little blonde girl is wide awake and starts crawling across the floor with adorable determination. She is clearly headed somewhere important on her tiny hands and knees. The little girl is a tiny blur as she sprints across the floor. She looks like she is on a mission to find her breakfast. She zooms right past the couple without even a second glance. Her parents are shocked by how fast she can move when food is on the line. Her eyes sparkle like stars when she finally reaches the pot of meat. It is like she found a chest of buried treasure. She is so desperate to eat that she tries to climb right into the tub to reach it. Juwon and Lizzie can only watch and laugh. Our guy lets out a huge laugh at the sight of her trying to dive into the bucket. Seeing the kid this happy is a huge relief. The girl is practically head first in the barrel as she yells for more meat. Nothing is going to stand between her and a good breakfast. Juwon is in such a good mood that he cannot stop smiling. Seeing his family happy and healthy is all he ever wanted. Later on, our boy heads out into the woods to find more resources. He is feeling confident and ready to take on whatever comes his way. This time he is not going empty-handed. He holds up his sturdy axe, feeling much more prepared for any wild animals he might encounter. He walks deeper into the forest, his boots crunching on the grass. Everything seems quiet for now, but he stays alert. Suddenly he stops and looks toward the brush as he hears a strange noise. Our boy stays on guard, wondering what is waiting for him. Juwon stops in his tracks as the air around him suddenly shifts. He wonders why the atmosphere feels so heavy all of a sudden. Something is definitely wrong in these woods. His knuckles turn white as he tightens his grip on the axe. Even though he is in a wide, open forest, The pressure is so intense that he feels like he is suffocating. Our boy braces himself for the worst. He stares into the shadows, wondering what kind of massive beast is about to jump out and challenge him this time. Crunching footsteps echo through the grass, getting closer and closer. Juwon stands his ground, but he can tell this is no animal. This is something much more calculated. He blinks in confusion as the shape finally emerges from the brush. It is not a monster at all, leaving him completely caught off guard by what he sees. A mysterious man draped in a heavy black cloak walks out from between the trees. Juwon keeps his axe ready, watching every single step the stranger takes. The man reveals a stern, bearded face with eyes that have clearly seen their fair share of trouble. He looks like someone who has seen plenty of combat. Our protagonist stares the stranger down, his mind racing to figure out his identity. Out here in the middle of nowhere, a guy like this could be a massive problem. Fresh blood spatters across the jagged rocks, proving a dangerous beast passed through recently. The forest is definitely not safe tonight. Looking closer at the trail, it becomes obvious that the creature left behind deep and heavy tracks that no normal animal could produce. This mysterious old man has been watching the mountainside for a long time, and he's finally spotted something that doesn't add up. He originally assumed the target had help, but it turns out the guy is out here all on his own. That makes him way more dangerous. After observing that mountain dweller for several days, the old man realized the guy does not even know how to handle a blade properly. Looking at the tracks left behind, the hunter can't help but shake his head at such a display of rank amateurism. It is hard for him to believe that someone this inexperienced could survive a single night in these monster-infested woods. But a nagging suspicion keeps pulling at his mind. He needs to verify the truth for himself before he makes any final assumptions. He looks back toward the dense trees, his mind racing with new possibilities. This supposedly helpless man might be hiding a massive secret. The stranger finally steps out of the shadows, revealing a face hardened by years of surviving in the most brutal conditions imaginable. The two men stand in the dim forest light, sizing each other up as the old hunter prepares to make his move. He stops and fixates on Juwon's arm, unable to believe what he is seeing as he examines the old wounds. His eyes lock onto Juwon's arm, specifically those deep, jagged claw marks. He recognizes the brutal shape of those wounds immediately. Those are definitely wolf bites, but the way they healed is impossible. The skin has closed over perfectly when the muscle should have been completely shredded. Looking at Juwon, the old man realizes he should not be able to move around so perfectly. A normal person would be a broken mess. He starts to wonder if our boy is actually a rare mage. Visions of powerful fire and lightning users fill his mind as he considers the possibility. If our boy really is a hidden mage, then the old hunter just stumbled upon a literal gold mine in the forest. Juwon has no clue that he's being evaluated by a pro, looking more like a confused deer caught in the headlights. A predatory look enters the old hunter's eyes, as he realizes that fate has finally handed him the perfect tool for his vengeance. This is the moment he has been dreaming of for years, a chance to finally get his hands on some serious revenge. Juwon can sense the sudden shift in the air, feeling a heavy pressure coming from the old man that he can't explain. Juwon can sense the sudden shift in the air, feeling a heavy pressure coming from the old man that he can't explain. The old man drifts back into his own memories, thinking of a time years ago when he was still a vigorous and strong young man. Back then, he was a formidable hunter who patrolled the woods with a massive polearm. He was fast, capable, and full of pride. As a forest keeper, he was obligated to serve on the brutal battlefields for a certain period. He survived the carnage and the countless dead. After leaving his father behind, he wandered from village to village. He was searching for a purpose and a place to truly belong. He eventually found work in the mountains, climbing through the rocky terrain to protect the Lord's forest from any intruders or dangerous beasts. It was a beautiful region, rich with resources and overflowing with life. He thought he had finally secured a stable and successful future. The forest was open even to commoners who needed firewood. He spent his days deep in the brush, learning every hidden corner of the terrain. The forest was open even to commoners who needed firewood. He spent his days deep in the brush, learning every hidden corner of the terrain. But the forest held secrets that he was not prepared for. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in, turning his familiar territory into a death trap. But the forest held secrets that he was not prepared for. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in, turning his familiar territory into a death trap. He remembers the sheer terror of that moment, realizing he was no longer the hunter. He was vulnerable, and something was coming for him. He fell to the ground, paralyzed by fear as he realized he was being hunted by something lurking in the shadows. Small, pale goblins peer out from the darkness, their eyes glowing with a hunger that promises a fate worse than death. A massive green monster looms over him, making it clear that he isn't going to be escaping this nightmare anytime soon. That hunter realized too late that he was no longer at the top of the food chain. The look of pure terror on his face says it all. That hunter realized too late that he was no longer at the top of the food chain. The look of pure terror on his face says it all. He spent decades living in that hellhole, fueled by nothing but raw hatred. Every day was a struggle to keep his sanity while surrounded by literal monsters. Revenge became his only reason to breathe. He was obsessed with the idea of making those bastards pay for everything they took from him. Juwon stands his ground against the mysterious stranger in the middle of a sunlit clearing. Back in the present, our boy Juwon stands face to face with an old man in the woods. This old-timer has been watching him very closely. Deep scars on Juwon's forearm, a silent testament to the many battles he has survived. Juwon stays silent, observing the old man with a cautious gaze. You can tell he does not trust this stranger easily. The old man begins limping toward him, as Juwon maintains a very cautious and alert stance. The old man stops and offers a small, mysterious smile as they finally stand face to face. Signing this contract means the binding force will prevent him from running away whenever he wants. He offers a respectful bow to the elder despite his lingering doubts about this strange arrangement. Even while bowing, he keeps his center of gravity shifted back. He is ready to spring into action if this meeting goes south. The old man notices that even while greeting him, Juwon is prepared for a sudden attack. The old man is clearly impressed by Juwon's monstrous frame and strength. It is a level of power you just don't see every day around here. Morning arrives far too quickly for Juwon as he makes his way back to the cottage. Protecting his family is the top priority, so he refuses to invite the stranger inside. Inside, Lizzie and little Dorothy are happily cooking up a meal. Juwon wants to keep it that way, far away from any trouble. Juwon prepares to depart again, to keep the looming danger far away from his loved ones. The old man is still wearing that awfully suspicious smile. It is the kind of look that makes you want to reach for a weapon. This suspicious smile reminds him of a fake manager from his previous life in the city. Juwon prepares for the journey ahead, slinging a massive travel bag over his shoulder. He slings a heavy bag over his shoulder, preparing to head out again. Lizzie calls out to him, her voice filled with concern. Lizzie is frantically trying her best to pack a lunch for him, despite her clumsy nature. He can't help but blush at how hard she is working to take care of him. Dorothy watches in silence as her mother starts to get emotional over the quick departure. The little girl suddenly sprints across the floor with a very clear mission in mind. She stands firmly in front of the door, acting like a tiny but stubborn roadblock. She plants herself right in front of the door, blocking Juwon's path with her arms out. Talk about a tiny but effective roadblock. Lizzie quickly stuffs the food into his bag, while reminding him to eat properly today. He realizes that having a family to look after him is a truly incredible feeling. Juwon interprets her lingering gaze as a silent way of telling him to stay safe. Our hero playfully checks if she is actually worried about him coming back in one piece. Lizzie offers a gentle, encouraging smile, confirming her wish for him to return to them safely. Lizzie waves goodbye with a big smile, while Dorothy points out the forgotten lunchbox one last time. Dorothy sprints forward and shouts a final goodbye as the domestic peace begins to fade. Juwon gives a cheerful wave back, promising Dorothy that he will return safely. It is clear they have become a real family. Leaving the warmth of his home is turning out to be much harder than expected. A close-up of Juwon's eye captures a final, sharp look at the home he is leaving behind. He steals one last glance back, his eyes lingering on the life he is leaving behind for this mission. He eventually turns away from the house to follow the hooded man into the forest. Walking this far starts to wear on him as he questions the purpose of this trek. The guide stops abruptly and starts muttering words in a language Juwon cannot even understand. Juwon stares down at the grass, wondering if he is supposed to find something here. The mysterious guide leads the way deeper into the forest, but his complete silence makes Ju-won feel like something is slightly off about this entire situation. As Ju-won looks down at the path behind the guide, his expression turns pale with realization as he notices something disturbing about the trail being left behind. Looking closely at the path, Ju-won realizes with a shock that the old man's footprints are completely wrong, appearing more like shallow impressions than actual human steps. Our boy Ju-won watches the old man move with an eerie precision. He wonders if this is some high-level footwork, maybe even an earth-shattering stomp technique that keeps him so silent. If he wants to survive this training, Ju-won knows he has to watch every single step and copy the old man movements perfectly. One mistake out here could be his last. He focuses on the placement of each foot, trying to mimic the heavy yet silent rhythm. The forest floor is tricky, but Ju-won is determined to master this specialized walking style. The old hunter looks back with a sharp gaze. He does not say a word, but that look alone tells our boy that he is being graded on every single breath he takes. They continue deep into the thicket, moving further away from civilization. Every step deeper into the woods feels like stepping into a completely different world where the rules of the city don't apply. The mentor stops and has Ju-won touch the tree bark. He explains that a true hunter can tell which side of the slope they are on just by the texture of the trees. Ju-won drops to the ground, studying the dirt and roots as his teacher points out the subtle details. He needs to burn these lessons into his memory until they become second nature. After hours of trekking, they finally reach a rocky outcrop. Ju-won takes a seat, his legs probably screaming for a break after that intense navigation lesson. The old man reaches into his pouch, looking far more composed than our protagonist. It is clear that this grueling pace is just a casual walk in the park for him. He pulls out a small piece of dried meat, keeping his movements efficient and quiet. Even during a break, the mentor never lets his guard down for a second. As the mentor snacks, Ju-won is caught off guard. He realizes just how much he has to learn if he ever wants to look that relaxed in the middle of a monster-infested forest. Finally, it is time for the highlight of his day. Our boy excitedly pulls out the lunch Lizzie worked so hard to prepare for him, practically drooling at the thought of a home-cooked meal. The smell is incredible as he opens the box to find a perfectly fried egg and savory meat. This is exactly the motivation he needs to keep pushing through this hellish training. But just as he is about to dig in, the mentor starts gesturing frantically. He looks like he has just seen a ghost, pointing away with a look of pure urgency. The old man shakes his head and tells him to pack it up immediately. He is dead serious, warning Ju-won that opening a lunch like that here is basically a death wish. He explains that the scent of human food is a massive flare to the creatures living in these mountains. It is a smell that is completely foreign and enticing to every predator nearby. Out in the wild, even the peaceful-looking animals are always on high alert. That delicious aroma will spread for miles, and wild beasts will sniff it out in an instant. Ju-won looks totally defeated as he closes the box. He feels terrible wasting Liz's effort and wonders if he will ever actually get the chance to enjoy a meal in peace. With his stomach growling, they arrive at a small wooden cabin tucked away in the trees. The mentor looks down at him and confirms that this humble shack is where they will stay. The teacher steps out holding two massive wooden poles. These aren't just sticks. They are primitive bows that look like they belong in a museum rather than a hunter's hands. Our boy is just staring at them, completely baffled. He has seen Niels before, but these things look impossible to handle for anyone who isn't a giant. He wonders how anyone is supposed to actually aim and fire an arrow with something so oversized and clunky. It looks more like a structural beam than a weapon. The mentor hands one over, and the height difference is hilarious. Ju-won looks like a kid trying to play with his dad's tools as he holds the massive frame. Ju-won quickly realizes that drawing this thing is going to take a ridiculous amount of physical strength. His mentor just gives him a look that says, "Watch and learn." The old man raises the bow and draws it back in one smooth motion. Despite his age, the sheer power he exerts makes the thick wood bend like it is made of paper. It is mesmerizing to watch because his movements are so fluid. Even while pulling back enough tension to snap a normal man in half, the mentor looks like he is carved from stone. With a thunderous release, the arrow streaks through the air. It moves with such speed that it becomes a literal blur, cutting through the forest like a bolt of lightning. The arrow slams into a distant tree with enough force to make the entire trunk shudder. That is not just hunting. That is raw, unadulterated power on display. Juwon is absolutely floored by the display. He finally understands the secret behind this specialized archery, and he is eager to see if he can replicate that devastating impact. He steps up and tries to pull the string back himself. His face turns red from the effort as he realizes that simply holding the bow steady is a workout in itself. The mentor steps in to adjust his posture, showing him exactly where to place his hands and how to brace his core. One wrong move and the recoil could break his arm. Our boy is sweating bullets as he tries to maintain the draw. Every muscle in his body is trembling under the massive tension of the bowstring. He tells himself to focus, narrowing his eyes on the target. This is the moment where all that tracking and footwork training has to culminate into one perfect shot. Juwon reflects on everything he has learned today, from the feel of the bark to the discipline of a hunter. It is a lot to take in, but he is getting there. The journey is long and the training is brutal, but Juwon knows he has to work 10 times harder. He won't stop until every movement is as smooth as his mentor's. Juwon keeps practicing his draw under the watchful eye of his mentor. Every second spent with the bow is another step toward becoming a master of the forest. His focus is absolute, his eyes narrowing as he aims. This kind of discipline is what differentiates a survivor from a real hunter. As the day ends, the rustic cabin stands quietly in the woods. It is a humble home, but it is the first place that has felt safe in years. Inside, the little girl sprawls across the bed, humming happily. She thinks about how the meat Juwon brought is helping her finally feel full and healthy. The white sheets feel soft against her skin as she drifts off. After everything they've been through, a simple night of rest is the greatest luxury imaginable. The little girl rolls around on the plush blankets with a huge smile. She can finally relax without worrying about the cold or being hungry. The girl watches Lizzie from across the room, hearing her soft laughter. The atmosphere in the house has completely changed since Juwon arrived. Lizzie is actually smiling, and it warms the girl's heart. Lizzie reflects that they almost never had a reason to smile before our boy showed up. Just hearing the little one laugh makes Lizzie feel incredibly warm inside. It is like the comfort of a fireplace on a freezing winter night. The girl is already thinking ahead to her next feast. She hopes her stomach digests everything quickly so she can eat even more of that delicious meat. She breaks into a fit of giggles, feeling light and happy. This is the childhood she was always meant to have. She remembers Juwon holding her under the starry night sky. If Lizzie calls him her husband, the girl starts to wonder about her own place. She questions what exactly Juwon is to her. Could he actually be the father figure she has always needed? Tears begin to well up in her eyes as her emotions swell. The trauma of her past is still fighting against the happiness of her present. Suddenly, a dark memory flashes through her mind, making her wince. The peace is shattered by a lingering fear from her old life. She sits up in the middle of the large bed, looking around the dim room. The shadows suddenly feel a lot more threatening than they did before. Her face pales as she feels a sense of dread creeping back in. Some wounds are too deep for a single good meal to heal. She recalls being told she was a burden because she was not a boy. To the people from her past, she was just a useless mouth to feed. The terrifying image of a man looming over her returns. Her heart pounds in her chest as the old fear takes hold of her again. Panicked, she scrambles out of bed and rushes toward the storage tub. She needs to check if the food is still there or if this is all a dream. She stares into the tub at the fresh meat, but her relief is short-lived. A loud, angry voice suddenly erupts from outside. A man screams at Lizzie, telling her not to dare lie to him. The girl freezes, recognizing that aggressive tone instantly. Her breath hitches, and she starts to tremble. It is the sound of her worst nightmares coming to life. She pulls herself up to the window to see what is happening. Standing outside are the very men who made her life a living hell. 3 rough-looking men are standing by the door. The girl realizes with horror that she has seen these bastards many times before. She remembers them beating her father, which always led to him taking his anger out on her and Lizzie. This is a nightmare reunion. She is terrified for Lizzie, wondering if she will be okay. These men never bring anything but pain and suffering wherever they go. Outside, a blonde thug grabs Lizzie by the shoulder. She desperately cries out that she did not steal anything, but he is not listening. Lizzie tries to explain that her husband was the one who hunted the wolf. The thug just smirks, mocking her for spouting such nonsense. The red-haired thug leans in and yells right in her face. They are clearly trying to intimidate her into giving up their supplies. Tears stream down Liz's face as she tries to stand her ground. She is completely outnumbered and outmatched by these bullies. The lead thug barks at her to be quiet and shoves her roughly to the ground. They do not care about her at all, they only want the meat. The men barge into the house, looking for loot. It takes them less than a second to spot the massive wolf pelt resting in the corner. The blonde thug gasps in shock as he reaches out to touch the fur. He realizes immediately that this is a high-quality wolf hide. His greedy eyes widen as he realizes the value of their find. He tells the others they can sell this for a massive amount of money. The thugs start tearing the place apart, shouting at each other to search every single corner. They are clearly looking for more loot while they toss everything onto the floor. Beneath a table, a terrified little girl hides while the men's boots stomp right past her. She huddles down, trembling and clenching her small fists as hard as she can. Her heart is pounding so loud she is sure they will hear it. She stares out with wide, fearful eyes, praying that the invaders won't notice she is there. Lizzie hears the commotion inside and sprints back toward the room. She cannot stand by while these men ruin the only home she has left. Blocking the thugs, Lizzie throws her arms out to protect the pelt. With tears in her eyes, she yells at the top of her lungs that the prize belongs to them. A group of thugs cornered Lizzie. The blonde leader sneered, calling her a name and noting that she used to be too terrified to even speak. He grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the wall while mocking her for finally finding some courage now that she has a husband. With a violent shove, the man threw Lizzie to the floor. She hit the wood hard, the impact echoing through the small cabin. After being shoved to the floor, Lizzie groans in pain while trying to process what just happened. She looks completely exhausted and defeated by the sudden attack. Through the haze of pain, she spotted the little girl hiding nearby. The child was trembling, witnessing the entire brutal encounter. Tears welled in Liz's eyes as the realization of their situation set in. She looked completely devastated by the thug's cruelty. She turned her head away, her face pale and covered in cold sweat. It seemed like all hope was vanishing. The little girl watched from the shadows, her eyes wide with pure terror. She was frozen in place, unable to help. She thought to herself that she had to pretend she did not know what was happening. It was the only way she knew how to survive. Dorothy sobbed quietly, blaming herself for being a coward who always hid. She was terrified of what would happen next. The blonde thug looked down at Lizzie with a sadistic grin. He mocked her, asking if her new husband really made her think life was worth living. They felt safe because her husband did not speak their language. As long as they stayed quiet, they believed they could get away with anything. Lizzie stayed curled on the floor, surrounded by the three men. She looked small and vulnerable beneath their shadows. Without a shred of mercy, they hauled her up by her arms. She struggled, but their grip was like iron. The blonde leader grabbed her wrist, his expression turning serious. He was not finished with her yet. He began dragging her toward the exit, ignoring her desperate pleas. The other men followed close behind, enjoying the spectacle. They laughed as they hauled her out of the house. They did not care who saw or what damage they left behind. Dorothy stayed on the floor, her small hands trembling against the wood. The silence left in their wake was deafening. She watched them disappear through the doorway, knowing something terrible was about to happen to Lizzie. The fear finally broke her silence. Dorothy scrambled to her feet and ran through the house. The thought of Lizzie never coming back sent her into a panic. She reached the door and stopped, tears streaming down her face. The bright sunlight outside felt cold and lonely. The little girl let out a heart-wrenching wail. Her cries filled the air, echoing deep into the surrounding forest. She screamed out for Juan, begging him to come back. She was all alone and did not know where else to turn. While the thugs dragged Lizzie away, our boy Juan was finishing up his work nearby. He had no idea his home was under attack. Suddenly, Juan froze in his tracks. A distant, familiar sound caught his attention, cutting through the forest noise. The older man with him pointed back toward the cabin, noticing Juan's sudden change in demeanor. Something was clearly wrong. Juan gave a quick bow to his companion, his mind already racing. He needed to get back immediately. His face paled as he listened closer to the screams. That was not a normal cry for attention. He looked toward the direction of his home with a sinking feeling. He knew Dorothy would never cry like that unless it was an emergency. Panic surged through him as he wondered what could have happened at the cabin. He did not waste another second. Juin took off at a full sprint, his boots kicking up dirt as he charged through the undergrowth. He pushed himself to the limit, praying that Lizzie and Dorothy were still safe. This family is the only thing he has left. He finally burst into a clearing and saw the thugs. They were standing there with Lizzie, holding a large bucket and looking suspicious. Our boy was absolutely fuming, his eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. These idiots just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The thugs spun around, eyes wide with shock. They did not expect the husband to show up so soon, especially not looking like a demon. Our boy Juin doesn't waste a single second and throws a devastating punch that connects right with the thug's face. The sheer force of the blow catches everyone off guard. The impact sends the idiot crashing into the dirt face first. His friends freeze in absolute shock, completely blindsided by the husband's unexpected and violent arrival. Lizzie watches the scene, her voice trembling as she calls out his name. Juin looks focused, his face a mask of cold determination as he assesses the remaining threats. Without saying a word, our boy begins to close the distance. The thugs start to back away, realizing they just walked into a lion's den. One of the guys is practically choking on his own fear. He clutches his neck, eyes wide as he realizes there is nowhere left to run. Juin delivers a brutal kick that folds the man like a lawn chair. He is not just fighting to win, he is fighting to end them. The thug hits the ground with a sickening thud. Lizzie stands frozen in the background, unable to believe how quickly the tables have turned. The blonde thug tries to retaliate, swinging his fist with a desperate shout. He is swinging for his life, but he is completely outclassed. Our boy catches the momentum and drives the man backward. He uses his full weight to tackle the idiot straight into the grass. Juin hoists the guy up, showing no mercy. The thug lets out a pained groan as he realizes he is completely at Juin's mercy. With a ferocious slam, our boy drives the blonde guy into the earth. The impact is so hard it kicks up dust and debris from the forest floor. He pins the man down, his fist cocked back for the finishing blow. The thug is trembling, looking up at what can only be described as a demon. Juin thinks that human nature is filthy and ugly. He believes that once people look down on you, everything is over. Juin strikes the blonde thug across the face with a powerful blow. He is seeing red, determined to make these people regret coming near his home. He decides right then and there that he has to engrave this moment into their minds. They need a reason to be terrified of him. Standing over the fallen men, a terrifying blue aura begins to radiate from our protagonist. He wants to make sure these bastards never come back here again. The blonde thug cowers on the ground, his spirit completely broken. He is staring up at a man who looks ready to tear the world apart. Suddenly, Juin hears someone call out his name. He snaps his head around, his eyes still glowing with that intense, murderous energy. A sharp blade whistles through the air. Someone screams a warning for Juin to watch out as a sickle comes flying toward him. The blonde thug has regained his footing and tries to strike from behind. He is desperate enough to use a tool as a weapon, but our boy is too fast. He catches the thug's wrist mid-swing, stopping the blade just inches away from its target. With a sickening crack, Juin twists the arm, forcing the man to scream in agony. He is not showing a shred of pity for this trash. Our boy's face is twisted in a snarl, his eyes burning with blue light. The thug is howling as his arm is mangled by sheer strength. An old man in a dark green cloak suddenly appears, shouting for them to stop this right now. He steps into the clearing to end the carnage. The elder grabs Juin's arm, trying to ground him. Juin looks startled, the heat of battle still clouding his mind as he stares at the newcomer. The old man points toward the cabin. He asks Juin if he can see how terrified his own daughter is by this display of violence. Juin looks over and sees Lizzie standing there, her face pale with worry. She is watching him, and the fear in her eyes cuts deep. Little Dorothy is huddled in the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. The sight of her father looking like a monster has absolutely traumatized the poor girl. Reality finally starts to sink in for our boy. The blue aura fades as he realizes he has let his rage get the better of him. The clearing goes quiet, save for the sound of the wind and the smoke rising from the cabin. The violence has come to a sudden halt. Lizzie thinks about how Juwon always seemed so gentle before. Seeing him this furious reminded her of her late husband in an unsettling way. She admits to herself that for a split second, she wondered if she would end up beaten just like those men lying on the ground. But as soon as she looks into Juwon's eyes, that dark thought vanishes completely. She sees a depth of sadness and concern that she did not expect. Lizzie realizes that Juwon's current expression is that of a man who is terrified. He thinks that she is now afraid of him. She stares up at him, her heart heavy with conflict. Why would the reaction of a worthless woman like her matter so much to him? Lizzie stands frozen, her heart racing as she looks at the aftermath. She can feel her pulse through her blouse, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and realization. She wonders why she is still trembling when the danger has passed. She realizes her shaking is giving our boy the wrong idea, making him believe she is actually terrified of him. Our boy looks at her with eyes full of sorrow, fearing he has broken her trust. Lizzie watches her husband, wishing she could tell him not to wear such a pained expression. Explaining that she is not afraid should be simple, but their language barrier makes words useless. They stand in the clearing, two souls trying to bridge the gap without a shared syllable. Lizzie reaches out, her hand still shaking with leftover adrenaline. She knows she needs to show him the truth since she cannot say it. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself to bridge the distance between them. Her expression softens as she prepares to comfort the man who just fought so brutally for her sake. Slowly, they step toward one another. The sound of their footsteps on the dirt is the only thing breaking the heavy silence of the forest. Our boy meets her halfway, gently taking her hands into his own. He is being so careful, proving he is a total sweetheart despite the intense fight. Lizzie gently takes Juwon's bruised hands into her own, her touch filled with worry and care. She wants to show him that she is there to support him now. The second she feels the warmth of his skin against hers, all her doubts vanish. She knows in her heart that her initial fear was completely misplaced. A sense of absolute peace washes over Lizzie as she looks up at him. She realizes that as long as she stays by his side, she is finally safe from everyone. Lizzie gently takes his hand in both of hers, her touch hesitant yet longing. As she brings his hand toward her face, the warmth of his skin offers a comfort she has never known before. Tears of pure relief stream down her face as she breaks into a radiant smile. The language barrier doesn't matter anymore because, in this moment, they understand each other perfectly. Juwon looks a bit stressed out, sweat dripping down his face. Something is definitely weighing on our boy as he stares into the distance. Lizzie gazes up at him with tears in her eyes, gently holding onto his arm. She looks completely overwhelmed by whatever just happened. Without a word, Juwon pulls her into a tight embrace. The tension is thick as they stand together in the middle of the quiet woods. Juwon's large, bruised hands gently pat the girl's back as he holds her. The simple gesture of comfort says more than words ever could. Juwon tells her that if anyone should be giving thanks, it is him. He seems truly grateful for her presence in this moment. Lizzie is stunned, her eyes widening as she processes what he just said. It is like she cannot believe he is being this kind. Meanwhile, little Dorothy is hiding inside, looking absolutely terrified and on the verge of tears. The poor kid is clearly shaken up by the recent chaos. Sensing something is wrong, Lizzie points toward the house and tells Juwon they need to check on the girl immediately. Lizzie does not waste a second and sprints toward the building, while Juwon follows close behind. They need to make sure Dorothy is okay. She bursts inside and finds Dorothy trembling by the window. The girl is shaking like a leaf, clearly traumatized by what she saw. Lizzie looks at her with a heartbroken expression. She can see just how much fear is packed into that tiny frame. Dorothy is crying her eyes out, clutching her hands together. It is obvious she is scared of the violence she witnessed earlier. A flashback shows Juwon absolutely wrecking a guy with his massive fists. To a kid like Dorothy, seeing that kind of power is terrifying. The little girl is haunted by memories of her stepmother and Lizzie covered in painful bruises. She's absolutely terrified that she might be the next one targeted. Lizzie watches as the little girl reflects on her actions and decides she needs to apologize immediately. Dorothy can't bear the thought of being treated like a ghost again. She reaches out her hand, trying to bridge the gap between them. Dorothy looks hesitant, her tiny arms reaching back but still full of doubt. Tears continue to stream down the little girl's face. She is just a child trying to make sense of all this danger and aggression. Lizzie pulls the child into a desperate hug as she tries to understand what's wrong. Emotions overflow as they both break down in tears together. As she holds the child, Lizzie starts crying too. This whole situation is just a mess of emotions for everyone involved. The little blonde girl clings to Lizzie's sleeve, her eyes filled with tears and uncertainty. She is just a child trying to process a world of fear. Lizzie explains that there is nothing to fear because Papa is here. Dorothy repeats the word, looking completely confused by the reveal. Lizzie gives a soft laugh and asks the girl if she truly knows who Juin is. It turns out the kid has been in the dark this whole time. Lizzie gives a soft, gentle laugh. She finds it almost sweet that the girl had no idea about her own father. Dorothy just stares blankly, her brain trying to process the fact that the scary strong man is actually her dad. Lizzie explains the situation in a way Dorothy can understand, trying to make the new family dynamic feel less intimidating. The girl's eyes go wide and her mouth drops open in pure shock. That giant guy is her papa. She looks out toward the woods where Juin is standing. Seeing him from this new perspective makes him look totally different. She quickly turns back to Lizzie, looking for confirmation. She needs to know if this is actually for real. Lizzie smiles and pets her head, confirming the news. She wants Dorothy to feel the security of having a protector. Dorothy thinks back to Juin kicking the life out of those men. If he is her papa, then all that power is for her protection. She hops down and rushes back to the window, eager to see him again. The fear is officially being replaced by excitement. Dorothy cups her hands and shouts out for her papa at the top of her lungs. She finally understands she has a dad. She realizes that a man with a huge body and huge hands is exactly what her papa should be. He is her hero. The little girl sprints out the door, fueled by pure joy. She finally has a strong father to protect her and Lizzie. She remembers how he holds her tight at night when they sleep. Having a real family is the best feeling in the world. Dorothy looked up with wide eyes, her whole world shifting in an instant. She remembered how Juin treated her with such kindness, giving her food and even her very own name. The realization that the man who named her was actually her papa felt like a total miracle. Our boy turned his head in surprise as he heard the little girl shouting behind him. Dorothy let out a deafening cry for her papa that echoed through the night air. In the reflection of his eyes, he saw the blonde girl sprinting toward him with pure joy. Juin immediately opened his arms wide, ready to catch the tiny force of nature. As the moon hung high above, our boy scooped Dorothy up into a massive hug while she cheered in a language he could not quite place. He held her close, looking down with a mixture of relief and genuine affection for his new daughter. Carrying her through the woods, he could feel how much she already trusted him. Suddenly, our guy caught a whiff of something strange and wondered what that smell could possibly be. Looking down at her dress, he realized the poor girl had actually peed herself during all the excitement. Dorothy did not seem to mind at all, just giggling happily as she clung to his shoulder. Lizzie came running out from the house, her face lighting up when she saw them together. Our boy pulled them both into a warm embrace, feeling a deep connection even though he did not understand the words Dorothy was shouting. The little girl looked like she had a new mission, her eyes locked onto something nearby. She hopped down and took off running again, leaving her parents confused as she screamed for meat. Without a single care in the world, she sprinted right past the pile of thugs Juin had just knocked unconscious. Nothing was going to stop her, especially not a few groaning idiots on the ground. She finally reached her prize, a huge wooden bucket overflowing with fresh raw steaks. The kid was determined to bring the loot back, straining with all her might to lift the heavy bucket. Her yellow eyes sparkled with greed as she managed to tilt the massive container upward. Juin and Lizzie rushed over to stop her, shocked to see the tiny girl hoisting the whole thing over her head. Her face turned bright red from the effort, but her obsession with meat was clearly stronger than her muscles. Our boy stood there in disbelief, watching his daughter start to drag the heavy load across the grass. While Juin was sweating from the stress, Lizzie could not help but giggle at Dorothy's terrifying dedication to food. She stood over the bucket like a proud hunter, waiting for her papa to acknowledge her great catch. The girl cheered with excitement, showing off the meat as if it were the greatest treasure on earth. Our boy looked into her sparkling eyes and realized that her love for steak was actually a bit scary. Lizzie claps her hands and insists that they take Dorothy inside too, since staying out in the open like this is still way too dangerous. Juin nodded, ushering the excited blonde girl toward the safety of their stone home. He leaned against the doorframe and let out a long sigh, finally getting a moment to breathe. Once the girls were safe inside, our boy walked back out toward the men groaning in the grass. His expression went cold as ice, his eyes glowing with a dark, threatening light that meant business. A mysterious man in a green cloak suddenly blocked his path, forcing Juan to come to a dead stop. The old man in the green cloak warns Juan that he cannot just go around beating or killing people anymore. Our boy listens, his face set in a hard, thoughtful expression. Juan reflects on the warning he received about his violent tendencies. He knows he can't risk being arrested or enslaved again now that he has people to protect. His gaze shifts toward the house where Lizzie is waiting. He knows he is not alone in this world anymore, and that changes everything about how he handles himself. Even so, he makes a silent promise. If those bastards ever cross his path again, he will make sure they face a fate far worse than death. The cloaked man gives Juan a final pat on the chest, gesturing for him to get moving. He is done lecturing, and it is time for our boy to head back. He looks down at the heavy wooden chest full of tools, sitting on the grass near the unconscious men. He pauses at the doorway, watching Lizzie and Dorothy sharing a quiet moment together on the floor. Seeing them like this makes all the struggle worth it. Our boy steps inside with a soft smile, carrying the heavy chest and a fresh fur pelt. The tension from the fight outside finally starts to melt away. He sets the gear down and starts sorting through his supplies. Between the wolf pelt and the tools in the chest, he is making sure they are well prepared for anything. As he grips his tools, a heavy thought crosses his mind. He has already experienced the pain of losing everything he cared about once before. Losing a family once was more than enough for a lifetime. He refuses to let history repeat itself, no matter the cost. A look of pure determination and warmth washes over his face. This new life is precious, and he is going to be the shield that protects it. No matter what happens next, he is going to stay by their side. Lizzie and Dorothy wave him over, their smiles being the only reward he really needs. Juan looks at Lizzie tenderly. He wishes he had the magic to make her bruise vanish in an instant. Lizzie smiles up at him, gently placing her hands on his face. She seems to be teasing him a bit as he blushes. Our boy can't help but let out a sheepish grin while she squishes his cheeks. It is a quiet, peaceful moment between them. Juan sweeps Lizzie off her feet, carrying her carefully. She looks a bit startled but happy in his arms. He holds her close, their eyes meeting in a shared moment of affection. The chemistry here is undeniable. Juan looks down at her with a slightly worried but determined expression. He clearly cares for her deeply. Our girl looks up at Juan with wide eyes, completely touched by his sincerity. She can't help but blush as she realizes how much he truly cares for her. They stay like that for a while, just taking each other in. Even without words, their bond is growing stronger. Our guy gives her a wide, bright smile. He is truly enjoying this new life he is building. Lizzie stares back, looking almost surprised by his warmth. It is clear she is not used to being treated this way. Meanwhile, the sun rises over the quiet little village. Everything looks peaceful, but things are stirring beneath the surface. A chicken gets a rude awakening as an old woman kicks it out of her way. Talk about a rough morning. The old woman grumbles about someone sticking their nose into everything. Behind her, the village chief watches with his arms crossed. She turns to argue with the chief, complaining about the newcomer. They seem to be talking about Juan. The chief notes that our boy looks like someone who is very used to fighting. He is not just some random traveler. The woman scoffs, clearly annoyed by the whole situation. She does not trust what is happening in their village. The chief thinks back to what he saw yesterday. He had been watching Juan closely. He remembers seeing nasty beast bite wounds on Juan's body. Wounds that definitely weren't there when he first arrived. The old man realizes the reports he received from Gus were completely accurate. He's found a potential ticket to wealth and power. He is convinced now. Juan is not just a warrior, he is a healing mage. The chief strokes his chin, lost in thought. Healing mage is a rare and valuable asset to have. His mind drifts toward the high spires of a grand castle. He is thinking about a life much bigger than this village. He imagines the wealth and power waiting for him in the city. All he needs is the right leverage. The old man grins, thinking this is his chance. He could live a life far beyond being a simple village chief. He realizes no one else knows about Juan's secret yet. The other villagers are too uneducated to notice the magic, but he has to be careful. If rumors spread and a noble guild takes Juwon first, he won't make a single coin. The chief and the woman continue their discussion outside. The woman looks skeptical while the chief keeps his hands behind his back, projecting an air of authority. She listens intently, a bead of sweat rolling down her face as she processes the potential danger and opportunity he's describing. A close-up of a text bubble explains the risk. If they aren't careful, the newcomer might realize they are skimming from the Lord's goods. The chief tells her it is fine. Juwon is already becoming far too fond of his new wife, Lizzie. The woman turns and walks away, still looking uneasy. She knows this is a dangerous game they are playing. The village chief stays behind, looking at the ground. He spots some old branches near a stone oven. He bends down and picks them up. His mind is still racing with plans for his future wealth. He tosses the wood into the roaring fire. He is ready to burn everything down to get what he wants. The flames flare up, casting a bright light over the area. A storm is coming for our boy, and he does not even know it. The village chief stands before the roaring fire with a sinister grin. He knows that to get the bones, he first has to give up some flesh. A dark, textured background reflects the shifting atmosphere as the chief's sinister plan begins to take shape. Meanwhile, at a nearby wooden cottage, a cheerful tune drifts through the air. Life seems peaceful for now, unaware of the schemes brewing just outside. Our boy finishes getting dressed, looking calm and collected as he prepares for the day ahead. He has no idea what the chief is currently plotting. Inside, Lizzie is busy going through some supplies. She looks down at the bags and jars, realizing that the previous delivery just was not enough. A few days later, Lizzie is still absolutely glowing while clutching her belongings. Seeing her so thrilled over simple ingredients is genuinely heartwarming for our boy. Our protagonist watches her with a soft smile. He starts to realize that true happiness is often found in the smallest, most ordinary moments of life. Our boy walks into the room, noticing that Lizzie seems happy again today. She looks up, her face lighting up even more when she sees him approaching. Lizzie quickly stands to greet him. A comfortable warmth fills the room as they start their morning conversation, enjoying each other's company. They share a laugh together. Our boy thinks she wasn't even this happy when her bruise vanished right before her eyes the other day. As Juwon heads out, our girl waves him goodbye from the doorway. She lets him know that Gus is out hunting rabbits today while he walks toward his next task. Our boy walks into the storage area and stares at the massive pile of firewood. He realizes he needs to get to work if he wants to finish everything today. Little Dorothy is off in her own world, dancing around with bones in her hands. She is having the time of her life in her own cute way. Our protagonist grips his axe, but he suddenly looks completely disturbed. He is sweating and seems to be having an internal crisis about the upcoming hunt. He shakes his head frantically, trying to clear his thoughts. Whatever he is imagining right now is clearly messing with his head in the worst way. He cannot help but imagine Lizzie as a cute, fluffy white rabbit. The thought of hunting something that reminds him of her makes him feel incredibly guilty. Our boy blushes deeply and covers his face in embarrassment. He is definitely falling hard if he is comparing her to an adorable forest animal. Sunlight filters through the trees deep in the woods. Our guy desperately hopes that if they do catch a rabbit, it is the ugliest one in existence, but something dark and heavy is prowling through the undergrowth. This definitely does not look like a cute little bunny waiting in the shadows for them. Juwon wiped his forehead after finishing his morning chores. He had already fetched the water and split the wood, but he still had plenty of time left before the day really started. With the firewood neatly stacked and the axe put away, he looked around for something to do. He decided to use this extra time to practice his magic skills. Since yesterday, healing minor cuts had become second nature to our boy. He marveled at his hands, feeling more confident in his abilities with every passing day. He thought back to that life or death struggle where he first felt his power surge. He wondered how he managed to pull it off under such intense pressure. Closing his eyes, he focused on the core of his being. He needed to figure out if he could replicate that feeling without a monster breathing down his neck. He took a deep, focused breath to center himself. It was all about visualizing the energy and guiding it where he wanted it to go. Extending his hand, he tried to manifest something new. He wasn't expecting much to happen, but he had to see if he could produce something flashy like fire. He stood there for a long moment as nothing happened. It seemed like fire magic was going to be much harder to master than his healing spells. He imagined how thrilled Dorothy and Lizzie would be if he could show them something truly magical. He really wanted to share his progress with his family. He sighed, feeling a bit let down by his lack of progress. Healing was great, but it didn't exactly have the same wow factor as a blazing flame. Suddenly, a tiny spark flickered at the tip of his finger. His heart skipped a beat as he felt a sudden warmth radiating from his hand. That little spark quickly grew into a small, dancing flame. He stared at it in disbelief, realizing he had actually done it. Juwon couldn't help but grin as the tiny lighter flame hovered over his finger. This was exactly the kind of trick he wanted to show the family. Dorothy stepped out of the house, still rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She froze when she saw her father standing there with fire on his hand. The little girl squinted, trying to make sure she wasn't still dreaming. Her eyes slowly widened as she realized what was happening. Dorothy's yellow eyes sparkled with pure joy and excitement. She had never seen anything so magical in her entire life. The little girl is absolutely shocked when her father shows her a magical trick. She points in disbelief, wondering how he could possibly pull off something so cool right in front of her. Running over to her father, she grabbed his hand to get a better look. She wasn't even afraid of the heat, she was just mesmerized. Her eyes light up as she watches the tiny flame dance on her father's fingertip. She keeps a firm grip on his hand, completely captivated by the magic she never knew he possessed. Lizzie heard the commotion and came rushing out to see what the fuss was about. She found the two of them standing together in the yard. Lizzie gasped and covered her mouth, completely stunned by the sight. She couldn't believe Juwon had already learned how to conjure fire. Juwon felt a bit sheepish that the flame was so small. He wished he could make it bigger for them, but he just couldn't get it to grow. He told himself that at least he could use 2 types of magic now. He hoped to one day be able to summon proper, elegant flame. Lizzie stared at him with wide eyes, her heart full of pride. She was clearly impressed by how hard he had been working. Both mother and daughter eventually started heading back to the house to resume their mourning. They were still in awe after witnessing such a surprising magical miracle. The little girl was so pumped up that she began sprinting toward the door. She was likely already dreaming of all the cool things they could do with fire. After a while, our boy decided it was time to put the flame out. He stood tall, looking down at the small light on his finger. He gave his hand a quick flick, expecting the fire to vanish instantly. However, the stubborn little flame refused to go away. No matter how hard he shook his hand, the fire stayed perfectly attached. He started to realize that putting it out might be harder than starting it. He concentrated hard on making the energy dissipate. He was determined to get this thing under control before it caused any trouble. With one final effort, the flame finally winked out of existence. He let out a long breath, feeling a bit drained from the experience. Juwon walked back inside the house looking for the girls. He worked so hard for that tiny flame, and now he was finally done. He found Dorothy standing beside a large wooden barrel in the center of the room. She looked a bit pensive as she leaned against the rim and stared inside. The little girl looked up at him, her expression a bit somber. It seemed like she was missing the magic already. Lizzie stood over her, clearly amused by the situation. She laughed and told him that Dorothy was just sad the fire show was over. Juwon looked his daughter in the eye and promised her that he would bring home some fresh rabbit meat for dinner. He was determined to make it happen. As our boy stepped outside, he realized he wasn't alone. Someone was waiting for him right by the door. It was Gus, the seasoned hunter, standing there in his signature green cloak. He looked ready to head out and show Juwon the ropes. Juwon grabbed his gear, tightening the straps of his bag as he prepared for the long day ahead in the wild. Fully equipped with his bow and arrows, our boy said his goodbyes to Lizzie and Dorothy. Lizzie teased him, noticing there was already less meat in the house than before. He gave Dorothy a gentle pat on the head, promising to be back soon with the prize. The little girl couldn't hide her excitement. Juwon shared a warm look with Lizzie, feeling the weight of his responsibility to provide for this family. Before heading out, he leaned in for a quick kiss, much to Dorothy's surprise. The kid definitely wasn't expecting that level of romance. Dorothy made a hilarious face, clearly grossed out by the display of affection between her parents. Our boy knelt down to his daughter's level, while Lizzie laughed at the girl's dramatic reaction. It was a cozy family moment before the hunt. He planted a big kiss on Dorothy's cheek, making her giggle and squirm. The little girl screamed in mock horror. telling him his breath smelled like meat and accusing him of sneaking bites already. Once they hit the trail, Gus started the lesson immediately. He led Juwon through the brush and pointed out a pile of rabbit droppings as their first clue. Our protagonist listened intently, absorbing every bit of information the old man shared about tracking prey in these woods. Gus suddenly froze and pointed toward a clearing, signaling that their target was finally within sight. Juwon narrowed his eyes, focusing his vision on whatever was hiding in the tall grass ahead. But when he finally saw it, his jaw nearly hit the floor. This thing was absolutely massive and stood on two legs like a person. Our boy could hardly believe his eyes, thinking this creature looked more like a rabbit that had somehow evolved into a giant kangaroo. The beast snarled, revealing rows of sharp teeth and glowing yellow eyes that definitely didn't belong on a normal bunny. Gus didn't seem bothered at all, calmly stating that this monster was actually the perfect prey for their training. The old man let out a sly smirk, telling Juwon that this was going to be an easy win if he followed orders. He reminisced about the thrill of a first hunt, claiming that the feeling never truly fades no matter how old a hunter gets. Juwon nodded, reaching back to pull an arrow from his quiver as he prepared to engage the beast. He took a deep breath, steadying his hands while he moved into a better position among the trees. Gus leaned in and whispered his final instructions, making sure our boy was ready for what came next. The creature sensed them, shifting its weight and preparing to pounce at the slightest movement. Juwon prepares his bow as he stares down the trapped rabbit. Even though the beast is already tied up, Gus orders him to aim for the legs first to test his resolve. Our boy realized that hitting the legs would just leave the target screaming in agony, instead of finishing it quickly. The old man explained that the mountain is impartial and will make you pay if you don't respect the danger of the wild. Despite his hesitation, Juwon knocked the arrow and pulled back the drawstring, feeling the tension in his muscles. He stared down the shaft, worried that this shot would only cause unnecessary suffering for the creature. He had no idea why Gus was forcing him to do this, but he knew he had to trust the veteran hunter's methods. Gus gestured firmly, urging him to take the shot before the beast decided to charge them. The rabbit beast hissed, saliva dripping from its fangs as it stared back with primal hunger. Our boy focused his aim, his reflection visible in the creature's dark, predatory eye as he prepared to let the arrow fly. Our boy suddenly finds himself thinking back to the day he first arrived. Talk about a rough start for a new life in a strange world. He woke up in a dark, cramped cage, surrounded by other prisoners. They were all trapped like animals forced to endure a miserable nightmare together. Right beside him, an abandoned corpse lay cold on the floor. Nobody even moved it, showing just how little life mattered in that wretched place. It was a hellish environment where people were stripped of their humanity. Every day was a desperate fight just to keep his soul intact. Back then, he knew nothing about mountains or the art of hunting. He was just a survivor who had never faced a real predator before. Returning to the present, the rabbit beast screeches and charges forward with primal rage. Its glowing eyes are locked onto our boy as it lunges. Our boy keeps his cool and draws his bow back all the way. He focuses on his target, ignoring the fear threatening to shake his aim. He lets the arrow fly with a sharp twang. The shot is launched with everything he is cutting through the forest air with deadly speed. The arrow whistles through the air, heading straight for the aggressive beast lunging at him. It's the moment of truth as his very first hunt reaches its intense climax. The sound of impact echoes through the trees as the arrow finds its mark. This is the first kill of many if he wants to survive. A horned rabbit shrieks in pain as an arrow pierces its side. Our boy Juwon watches the struggle with a conflicted expression, clearly feeling the weight of the kill. Juwon grips his bow, turning to the hooded man beside him. He seems uneasy about the hunt, his brow furrowed as he processes the reality of survival in this world. Standing tall, our guy prepares for the next shot. The older man waits patiently in the background, serving as a silent mentor during this grim lesson in the forest. Juwon tells himself to stay focused. He knows he can't afford to pity the beast if he wants to survive, so he levels his bow at a target in the distance. He draws the string tight, the wood creaking under the tension. He tries to drown out the sounds of the forest, steeling his heart against the natural instincts of compassion. In his mind, he rationalizes that these are just animal cries and nothing more. It's a harsh perspective, but one he feels is necessary to function in this environment. A golden eye dilates with intensity. The focus is sharp and predatory, capturing the moment of life and death that plays out during every successful hunt. Our boy realizes that whether he is called a hunter or a killer, the result is the same. The labels don't matter when hunger is the driving force behind his actions. The duo takes a moment to rest among the trees. The peaceful scenery contrasts sharply with the bloody work they just finished, highlighting the duality of nature. Juwon reflects that hunting isn't some romantic adventure. He watches the old man efficiently bag their prize, seeing only the cold reality of a despicable but necessary act. He stares at his hands, contemplating the cycle of survival. It is a burden shared by every living thing, yet it still feels heavy on his conscience as a newcomer. He vows to never forget the gravity of his actions today. Even if it becomes routine, he wants to maintain some semblance of his humanity in this unforgiving world. The old man gathers the day catch, signaling that they are done for now. Juwon remains seated, still lost in his thoughts as he watches his mentor work. The veteran hunter looks on with a weathered, knowing expression. He has seen many youths struggle with the reality of the kill, and he waits for our boy to adjust. Leaning on his staff, the old man prepares to head back to camp. Juwon looks up, realizing that the day is over and they have work to do. Our guy casts a sidelong glance, his eyes reflecting a spark of an idea. He is starting to look past the act of killing and toward a more sustainable future. He looks down at the rabbit tucked away in the bag. It is a meager prize for such a heavy mental toll, leading him to search for a better way. As they walk, the old man mentions this is the last one for the day. He tells Juwon to hurry up, unaware that his companion is thinking of new possibilities. Juwon suddenly stops in his tracks. A realization hits him like a bolt of lightning, and he calls out for the older man to wait for a second. He considers the fact that rabbits reproduce incredibly fast. If he could just raise them instead of hunting them, he could solve their food problems without the constant struggle. When he explains his plan to start a farm, the old man looks at him with total disbelief. He dismisses the idea with a frustrated wave of his hand. The elder can't help but chuckle at the boy's naivety, showing some classic old-timer skepticism. To him, domesticating wild creatures sounds like more trouble than it is worth. Eventually, he relents and tells Juwon he can try if he really wants to. Our guy is thrilled, his face lighting up as he gets the green light. Eager to get started, Juwon grabs the bag with renewed energy. He is no longer just a reluctant hunter, but a man with a vision for a better life. He hauls the heavy load through the brush, following the old man back toward their shelter. The weight doesn't seem to bother him now that he has a goal. Back at the cabins, our boy moves carefully as he prepares to settle in. He is mindful of the surroundings, keeping his plan quiet while he works out the details. The small cluster of wooden buildings sits quietly in the forest clearing. This humble homestead is the only home Juwon has in this new, strange world. Stepping inside, he thinks back to his previous life where a family seemed impossible. Here, he has a chance to build something real, even if it starts with rabbits. Inside the cabin, the old man gets to work on a task. Juwon watches as his mentor uses a small knife to carefully shave down a thin strip of wood. Juwon scans the interior of the hut, his eyes landing on something interesting. He is always looking for clues about the culture and systems of this mysterious land. He notices a box filled with wooden tags sitting on a table. His curiosity is instantly piqued as he realizes these aren't just random scraps of wood. His gaze lingers on the markings. He recognizes them from an iron cauldron he saw earlier, realizing that there is a formal system of writing at play here. These tags are covered in the script of this world. To our boy, this is a golden opportunity to bridge the gap between his past and his current reality. He reaches out and picks one up, examining the strange characters. He knows that if he can master this language, his chances of survival will skyrocket. Juwon approaches the old man with the tag in his hand. He is eager to learn and asks the elder if he can teach him what the symbols mean. The old man pauses his work to look at the boy. He seems to be considering the request, wondering if the young hunter is truly ready for this kind of knowledge. Old man scratches his head, looking thoughtful. He seems surprised by the request, but he is not unwilling to help our guy out. The old man leads him deeper into the workshop to find the right materials. He begins searching through his storage crates for something useful to start the lesson. He rummages through the box, looking for specific tools. It looks like he is finally putting some of his old possessions to good use. Juwon is handed a stack of wooden tags tied together. The old man tells him to take them, as they were meant for someone else once. Our boy accepts the gift with a smile. Having a formal way to study this language is exactly what he needs to survive in this land. He gets right to work, dipping a quill in ink and practicing his strokes on parchment. Every letter he learns makes him a little stronger. The old man stands back and watches him with a heavy expression. He is clearly lost in painful memories of his own past. He never expected to still have these items. He originally bought them thinking he might earn military merit and be hired to serve a noble family. Looking down at his own feet, the old man sighs. If he had known his life would end up like this, he would not have bothered. The old man turns away with a heavy heart, haunted by memories of his past. He decides it is better to stop overthinking and just focus on the task at hand. Looking out toward the peaks, he realizes it is time to start scouting for signs of goblins. They must be living in a village nearby. Deep in the mountains, a pack of green monsters lurks in the shadows. The threat is real, and he knows he must go deeper. He notices that even though our boy is still inexperienced, he is learning how to hunt at an incredible speed. This kid is a natural. The old man walks away, satisfied with the progress. He is training Juwon for something much bigger than just hunting for food. His eyes glow with a cold, intense light. Underneath that helpful exterior, there is a burning desire for something much darker than simple survival. His inner voice screams that he will kill every last one of them. This is not just training, it is preparation for a massacre. The weight of his hatred is suffocating. This old warrior is fueled by a vengeance that has not faded with the passage of time. Back at the cabin, the sun is shining bright over the green trees. It is a peaceful morning, far away from talk of monsters. Inside, Lizzie is busy cutting fabric while Dorothy watches her with wide eyes. Life seems to have settled into a comfortable rhythm for them. Lizzie gives her daughter a warm smile. She is happy to have this moment of quiet before the busy day really gets moving. Suddenly, she hears a noise and looks toward the door. It sounds like someone is finally approaching the house. Juwon walks through the door, looking like a true woodsman with a bow and a quiver full of arrows. Dorothy immediately rushes to him. Our boy scoops his daughter up in a big hug. He looks tired from his trip, but seeing her always recharges his batteries. He sets a heavy, lumpy bag down on the wooden floor. It looks like he brought back something special from his recent hunt. The bag hits the ground with a solid thud. Lizzie and Dorothy are both dying to see what is hidden inside the sack. Dorothy looks on in shock as the bag begins to twitch and move on its own. She has no idea what kind of creature her father has brought home this time. Juwon holds Dorothy close while Lizzie prepares to open the mysterious sack. The anticipation in the room is high as they wait to see what is inside. Lizzie carefully unties the knot. Whatever is inside is moving around quite a bit, making the bag twitch and shake on the floor. Something jumps right out of the opening. Long, furry ears pop up as the creature makes its frantic escape into the room. Dorothy is caught completely off guard. She points in shock as their mystery guest leaps onto the wooden boards. The little creature darts toward the middle of the floor, moving with a speed that catches everyone off guard. Juwon watches with a smile, enjoying the family's reaction. Lizzie jumps back, startled by the sudden appearance of the tiny intruder. She looks on with a mix of fear and confusion as it scurries across the room. A pair of hands reaching out to steady the sack, but the rabbit is already making its move. Its large, dark eye looks out from the folds of the fabric. The horned rabbit fully emerges, sending Lizzie stumbling backward in a state of total shock. It is not every day that a mythical animal pops out of a hunting bag. Dorothy's eyes go wide as she stares at the strange creature. She is completely captivated by the sudden movement and can't look away from their new guest. The little girl is frozen in place, pointing a trembling finger at the rabbit while covering her mouth. This definitely wasn't the kind of dinner surprise anyone was expecting. The little creature scurries across the wooden floor with a quick flicker of its white fur. It is way faster than they anticipated. This fluffy little intruder finally settles down, revealing a single sharp horn on its forehead. Juwon explains that these creatures are common in this region and completely harmless to people. Little Dorothy can't believe her eyes when she sees what is happening. She gasps in pure delight, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the incredible sight before her. Lizzie was just as stunned, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to process the strange sight she had just stumbled upon. It turns out Lizzie found a little horned rabbit, and Dorothy could not contain her excitement over the adorable new fluffy guest. Lizzie looked a bit overwhelmed, wondering how such a rare creature just practically walked right into her hands without any struggle. This was no ordinary bunny. It was a horned rabbit, usually much faster and harder to catch than anything in the woods. Lizzie admits that catching a creature like this shouldn't have been so simple. Meanwhile, Dorothy watches with wonder, clearly smitten with her new fluffy little friend. The little bunny let out a soft cry, its long ears drooping as it struggled to stay upright in Liz's arms. That was when Lizzie noticed a dark bruise on its side. The poor thing was clearly suffering from a painful injury. Seeing the bunny in pain broke little Dorothy's heart, and she looked up at her mom with the saddest eyes imaginable. Our boy Juan walked into the room, and Dorothy immediately turned to him, her eyes welling up with tears for the bunny. He placed a hand on his chest, assuring his daughter that everything was going to be just fine now that he was here. Juan gently took the injured creature from Liz's hands, his expression softening as he looked at the shivering small animal. He cradled the bunny carefully, noticing how much it was shaking from the intense pain of its recent wound. Without missing a beat, our boy let his mana flow, a warm golden light beginning to radiate from his palms. The magical glow surrounded the bunny, and Dorothy watched in awe as the healing power started to mend the broken skin. Dorothy was over the moon, cheering that her papa was the most amazing person in the whole wide world for helping. Juan could not help but feel a bit proud, standing tall while his daughter clung to his leg in a big hug. The rabbit was completely healed now, looking much calmer as it sat comfortably in our boy's strong hands. Dorothy rushed off and returned with a small wicker basket, ready to make a cozy bed for her brand new friend. Juan lowered the bunny into its new home, making sure it was settled in nice and easy for the night. In no time at all, the little guy was fast asleep, curled up into a tiny ball of fluff inside the basket. Our guy gave his daughter a warm smile, happy to see her so full of life and compassion for living things. Lizzie and Dorothy watched the sleeping rabbit together, both of them feeling grateful for this peaceful moment in their home. Little Dorothy beamed with pride, looking down at her new pet with a smile that could light up the entire village. Later that evening, the family settled down together on the floor, enjoying the simple warmth and safety of their cabin. Juan and Lizzie shared a tender glance, a quiet understanding passing between them as they relaxed after a long day. Outside, the night was still, and their humble wooden cabin stood as a safe haven deep within the dark forest. Dorothy was finally tucked into bed, sleeping soundly with her new bunny companion resting right by her side. Sitting by the light of a small lamp, Juan reflected on how humans were naturally greedy creatures who always wanted more. He admitted that once they got a house, he started dreaming of expanding it so Dorothy would have more room to run. Now that his family was safe, he even found himself wanting to learn how to read and write like a noble man. Despite all his new ambitions, our boy knew the person he was most grateful for was standing right beside him. He noticed Lizzie looking a bit worn out after a long day of working and taking care of their busy household. Our boy gently placed his hands on her shoulders, wanting to show her some much-needed appreciation for her hard work. He started giving her a shoulder massage, and though Lizzie was surprised at first, she quickly melted into his touch. The gentle pressure of his palms worked through the tension in her neck, making her heart race as she leaned back into his firm chest. Our boy continues the soothing treatment, his hands moving rhythmically across her shoulders to help her relax after a long day. Lizzie puts her hand over his, showing her appreciation for the quiet, tender moment they are sharing together in their home. Our boy pulls her into a sudden embrace, catching her completely off guard. She flushes a deep red, her heart racing as he holds her close in the dim light. Standing together by the flickering lamp, they share a silent connection. For a moment, the weight of the world disappears, replaced by the warmth of each other's presence. To reach the big city and find the information broker, Juan has to spend a day and a half traveling by carriage. The road is long and the journey is exhausting. It has not even been half a day, but our guy is already feeling incredibly stiff. He grumbles about the hassle and the rising costs of the fare and broker fees. Looking at his fellow travelers, he notes that most healing mages are small and physically weak. This older man certainly fits that description perfectly. However, the old man stares back in awe, He thinks to himself that he has never seen anyone as massive and naturally powerful as our boy in his entire life. A knowing smirk creeps across the old man's face. He clearly recognizes that Juwon is not just some ordinary villager passing through this dangerous territory. The old man is suddenly startled by his fellow travelers. They nudge him aggressively, curious about the massive warrior he was just staring at. They continue to pester him, demanding to know if he has ever seen someone so large. The old man looks down, overwhelmed by their constant questioning. This older villager looks completely serious as he drops some heavy news. He warns our protagonist that the situation is far more dangerous than anyone realized. Juwon realizes he forgot something important while living in the village. This area is dangerously close to the enemy nation, and the threat of war is always looming overhead. The horses pull the carriage along the dusty path, surrounded by dense greenery. It is a long trek, and every bump in the road reminds Juwon of his mission. Back at the house, Dorothy is full of energy as she wakes up her bunny companion. She pokes at the fluffy creature, giggling as it starts to stir. Lizzie enters the room and watches her daughter with a soft smile. She is glad to see Dorothy so happy with her new pet after everything they endured. Dorothy carefully places the bunny in a small basket, treating it like the most precious thing in the world. Lizzie reminds her to be gentle as they head out. Looking up at her mother, Dorothy asks if the bunnies are hungry. She takes her responsibilities as a pet owner very seriously for someone so small. With a joyous laugh, the young girl sprints out of the house. Lizzie follows behind, enjoying the simple peace of their new life together. Dorothy reaches the garden fence and notices something unusual. She stops in her tracks, wondering why things look a bit different today than they did before. She puts on a serious face, determined to figure out what is going on. Nothing gets past this little detective when it comes to her bunnies. She makes her way over to the small hutch tucked away in the woods. She is excited to feed her fluffy friends and spend some time playing. Peering over the wooden slats, Dorothy finds the bunnies waiting for her. They twitch their noses in anticipation, sensing that food is finally on the way. She gathers a large bundle of fresh green leaves from the surrounding bushes. This is the perfect snack to keep her pets happy and healthy. Our girl carries the pile of greens over to the enclosure, her face lighting up with joy. The bunnies hop toward her, clearly recognizing their favorite human. She drops the food down and tells them there is plenty more where that came from. It is a heartwarming sight to see her so focused. Dorothy beams with pride as the bunnies start munching away. She loves being able to help out and look after her new friends every single day. While Juwon is away working hard, his family is thriving. Dorothy is full of laughter, and Lizzie is finally able to relax and enjoy their peaceful home. The little girl cheers as the bunnies finish their meal. It is a simple life, but it is exactly what they needed after so much hardship. Later that day, Lizzie kneels on the floor, clutching a massive dark fur pelt to her chest. It looks like a remnant from one of Juwon's successful hunts. Lizzie holds the massive dark fur pelt close, her face full of worry. She knows they desperately need money, but parting with this treasure feels like a huge mistake. Caught in a massive dilemma, she struggles between respecting Juwon's wishes and keeping the family afloat. She tallies up all the missing supplies while staring at the valuable fur. Our guy is off dreaming of pots, boots, and better supplies, but Lizzie is the one who has to make the tough choices. She cries while hugging the fur. She looks at the grooming tools on the floor next to a rabbit's skin. She knows what she has to do, but the thought of using the scissors on herself is terrifying. Lizzie looks down with a heavy heart. She has made her choice. This is the only way to get the supplies they need for the coming cold. She pulls her long brown hair back. It is a part of her she always cherished, but she knows survival comes first. She is ready for the sacrifice. The blades of the scissors close shut. One snip after another, she thinks about the supplies they need. She is letting go of her hair to secure their future. Outside, the afternoon sun warms the roof of their home. Everything looks peaceful, even though Lizzie just made a life-altering decision inside those walls. Our boy Juwon finally returns. Dorothy squeals for her papa and runs straight to him. He kneels to catch his daughter, calling her name with a tired but happy smile. Walking back into the house, Juwon finds Lizzie waiting for him. He gives her a soft smile, completely unaware of the painful sacrifice she just made for the family. His eyes practically bulge out of his head. He is completely stunned into silence. He can hardly believe this is the same woman he left just a few hours ago. Lizzie stands there with her hair cut short to her shoulders. She brushes a strand behind her ear and smiles shyly, wondering what Juwon thinks of her bold new look. Juwon looked a bit overwhelmed as he faced his family. He wasn't used to this kind of domestic life yet, and it showed in his nervous expression. Lizzie stands by while Dorothy and another little girl start running around the room. The kids were clearly full of energy, making things quite lively for our guy. Dorothy puffed out her cheeks in a classic pout. She was definitely unhappy about something, and she wanted everyone in the room to know it. Our guy watched them with a stoic face, trying to process the chaos of being a father. Lizzie just smiled, clearly amused by the whole situation. The family gathered in their modest home. It was a quiet moment, but you could feel the new dynamic settling in between them. Juwon reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind Liz's ear. His touch was hesitant, but full of a warmth he rarely showed. Lizzie looked up at him, her heart fluttering. She couldn't help but think that he was a truly strange man, unlike anyone she had ever met. She remembered the hard times years ago when women in the village had to sell their hair just to survive. It was a desperate move, but those days felt like a lifetime ago now. Juwon pulled her into a firm embrace, promising a much brighter future for their family. Lizzie leaned into him and closed her eyes, soaking in the comfort. For the first time in forever, she actually felt safe and protected. Dorothy watched them with wide, curious eyes. Seeing her parents so happy brought a massive grin to her face. The little girl started giggling, her joy infectious enough to fill the entire room. Life was finally starting to look up for this family. Later that day, Juwon prepped a wooden carrier on his back. He told them it wouldn't be too heavy and insisted on carrying Dorothy himself. With a content smile, our boy stood tall with his daughter secured on his back. He looked every bit the proud father as they prepared. The trio set off into the woods, enjoying the fresh air and sunshine. Dorothy waved her hands around, excited for the adventure ahead. They eventually arrived at a bustling market town. The streets were filled with people and the sounds of merchants hawking their wares. Dorothy jumped down and started running through the crowd with pure excitement. Lizzie and Juwon followed close behind, watching her every move. Juwon takes a moment to look around the bustling marketplace, finally feeling at peace in the chaotic crowd. He is genuinely amazed by how lively everything is. He noticed how everyone was moving with purpose, living their resides in this crowded place. It felt strange to finally be part of it. Our guy walked through the sea of people, feeling the weight of the carrier on his back. This was a whole new experience for him. His mind drifted back to a different time. He remembered walking through a snowy city, surrounded by people but feeling completely alone. Back then he was just a ghost in the machine, passing through the crowd without anyone noticing. It was a cold and lonely existence, but in the present, things were different. He had a wife walking by his side and a child leading the way through the market. A genuine smile spread across his face as he realized how much his life had changed. He wasn't alone anymore, and that meant everything. Dorothy dashed toward a stall, her eyes lighting up at all the colorful items on display. She was like a little ball of energy. The family enters the market under the shade of the vendor tents. It was a perfect day for a trip to town. Dorothy stopped in front of a merchant, her eyes sparkling with wonder. She was fascinated by everything she saw on the tables. The market was packed with vendors selling food and household goods. Juwon and Lizzie finally caught up to their energetic daughter. The little blonde girl looked around, her curiosity getting the better of her. She wanted to touch everything and see how it worked. Suddenly, a young boy in red clothes walked up to her. He looked just as surprised to see her as she was to see him. Dorothy points out a stern-looking boy in red clothes, telling him he looks totally scary. The little guy just stares back with a serious expression. Lizzie laughed and told our boy to keep an eye on the kids. Juwon realized the little guy actually shared some of his features. She stepped up to the counter and pulled out a bundle of hair. Lizzie had been saving this to trade for much-needed supplies. The merchant, a grizzled man with a gray beard, leaned in to inspect the goods. Lizzie waited nervously for his appraisal. He took a close look at the bundle, his expression unreadable. Lizzie hoped it would be enough to get what they needed. The merchant carefully inspects the fur, noting its impressive gloss and thickness. Lizzie watches his every move, hoping this trade will finally give her family the supplies they desperately need. Lizzie looks worried, her hands clutched tightly at her chest. She is clearly anxious about the deal and afraid the man might try to take advantage of her situation. Suddenly, the grizzled merchant freezes as a massive shadow looms over his stall. His eyes widen in shock when he realizes someone is standing right behind the young woman. Our boy steps up, radiating an incredibly intimidating aura that makes the merchant break into a cold sweat. Juwon looks down with glowing eyes, making his presence known to everyone nearby. Our boy stands his ground in front of the merchant stall, his silent presence making the bearded man visibly nervous. Lizzie watches as the tension rises. Before the merchant can say a word, Juwon reaches out and firmly grabs his wrist. The man grunts in pain, completely shocked by the sheer raw strength our boy is displaying. Our boy keeps one hand on Lizzie to reassure her while snatching the pelt back with the other. He is not going to let this guy cheat them out of their hard work. Lizzie looks up at our boy in total disbelief as he handles the situation with ease. He stares down the merchant, making it clear that the previous terms are no longer acceptable. The merchant thinks to himself that this giant isn't just strong. Our boy cut him off completely before he could even start his usual routine of deceptive bargaining. Juwon turns away, holding the supplies and the pelt, signaling that this conversation is over. Lizzie can barely process how quickly the power dynamic just flipped in their favor. The merchant stands there reeling, looking completely flustered and defeated. He realized too late that he was trying to play games with the wrong person today. He tries to laugh it off awkwardly, attempting to save face in front of the other shoppers. It's a pathetic display from a man who just got thoroughly humbled. The merchant tries to get one last word in, pointing a finger as he speaks. Lizzie just gives him a cold stare, no longer intimidated by his empty posturing. Our boy gently takes Liz's hand and leads her away from the stall. She follows his lead, feeling a massive sense of relief now that the confrontation is over. As they walk through the busy market together, the merchant stares at their backs in silence. He is still trembling slightly from the encounter with the mysterious giant. The man calls out one last time, but Juwon doesn't even slow down. He is focused on getting his family back to safety with the goods they successfully secured. The merchant looks absolutely terrified and breaks into a cold sweat. He realizes he messed with the wrong customer and can only tremble in silence. The merchant slumps over his counter in despair while our boy and Lizzie walk away through the village. Around them, the daily bustle of the town continues as if nothing happened. Nearby, little Dorothy is busy showing off to the other kids. She stands tall with her hands on her hips, clearly proud of her super-strong dad. The scene blurs as the family begins their journey back home. They have a long walk ahead of them, but they are leaving the market with everything they needed. The family finally begins their walk home as Dorothy skips along happily behind the adults. It has been a long day, but everyone is in high spirits. As the sun begins to set, Dorothy feels a sense of pure safety and comfort. She finds herself drifting off, surrounded by a warm and familiar scent that calms her soul. She knows she has nothing to fear because her super-strong dad is there to protect her. That thought alone is enough to make her feel completely at ease. The little girl wonders why it feels so warm all of a sudden. Just a moment ago, the evening air was starting to feel quite chilly. Dorothy snuggles in, a peaceful smile spreading across her face. She is fast asleep now, completely unaware of the world around her as she rests. Suddenly, she has a realization as she starts to wake up from her nap. The warmth wasn't just a dream after all. Our boy is actually carrying the little girl tucked safely inside his massive blue coat. He walks steadily, ensuring she doesn't get jolted awake while Lizzie walks beside them. Dorothy realizes she is tucked inside her dad's coat right now. It is the perfect hiding spot, keeping her shielded from the wind and the cold. She peeks out from the fabric, her eyes bright with wonder as she looks up at her father. It is a cozy little nest that only our boy could provide. Juwon looks down at her with a gentle smile, happy to see her awake. Lizzie giggles at the adorable sight, her heart melting at how much our boy cares for Dorothy. Once they arrive back at their area, our boy carefully sets Dorothy down on the grass. She looks ready to run around again after her long nap in the coat. Dorothy immediately bolts toward their home, her blonde hair flying behind her. Our boy and Lizzie watch her go, happy to see her back in such high spirits. The little girl reaches into a patch of vibrant green herbs and starts picking them by the handful. She wants to be helpful and contribute to the family's chores. She carries a large bundle of the fresh plants toward their porch. Even after a long day at the market, she is determined to show off her hard work. Dorothy's bright yellow eyes sparkle with joy and determination. She is ready for whatever comes next, knowing her family is finally safe and together at home. Dorothy stands frozen in front of the small wooden shelter, her eyes widening in shock. The hutch is completely empty, and she realizes her pet rabbit has vanished. Tears well up in the girl's eyes as she realizes her little friend is gone. She drops the handful of fresh greens she just picked, her heart sinking with disappointment. Hearing the sudden distress, Lizzie rushes over to check on the child. She looks worried as she sees Dorothy standing there, completely heartbroken by the empty cage. Dorothy lets out a loud wail, unable to hold back her sadness anymore. Lizzie approaches quickly, trying to figure out what could have possibly happened to the missing animal. Our boy hears the crying from inside and steps out to see what the chaos is about. Lizzie watches him with concern as he finds them gathered around the empty hutch. Juwon walks over with a confused expression, asking what has everyone so upset. Dorothy just keeps sobbing, her little world ending because her bunny is nowhere to be found. Lizzie starts tearing up while pointing an accusing finger at our guy. Juwon breaks into a nervous sweat, clearly caught off guard by her sudden emotional outburst. A close-up of Juwon shows him breaking into a nervous sweat. He looks away, seemingly unable to face the emotional scene unfolding before him. He tries to speak, but he is clearly at a loss for words. The sudden pressure of the situation is making even this powerful warrior feel completely out of his element. Suddenly, Juwon lets out a hearty laugh, finding the whole situation more amusing than tragic. His reaction only makes the girls look at him with even more confusion. Dorothy does not find it funny at all and starts pounding her tiny fists against Juwon's legs. She's absolutely fuming that he's laughing while she is mourning. Our boy continues to chuckle while Lizzie watches him, completely exasperated by his lack of tact. This family dynamic is pure chaos, but at least they are together. The playful energy of the moment is suddenly cut short as a sharp chill runs through the air. A dark, ominous presence looms nearby, watching the family from the darkness of the woods. Hidden behind a massive rock, an older man in a dark green hood watches from the shadows. He remains perfectly still, keeping his eyes locked on the happy family. The mysterious man has a grim expression, sweat beading on his forehead as he observes them. Whoever this guy is, he's not here for a friendly visit. A goblin with glowing red eyes stares into the distance, its breath visible in the cold night air as it lurks in the shadows. The old man in the green cloak watches from his hiding spot, knowing if he rushes out now, he will just die like a dog. The old man realizes that without their leader, the group of goblins will quickly descend into chaotic infighting. He grits his teeth, knowing that the loss of discipline among the monsters is the only way he can survive this encounter. Demonic beasts and monsters are usually far more dangerous, but these creatures are pitifully weak when they are alone. Goblins are only terrifying because they fight in packs, and their rabbit-like reproduction rate ensures their combat losses never slow them down. The true horror is how they kidnap women from across the land, just to keep their vile population growing. Inside their dark caves, the misery of the captives remains beyond words as they are forced into a nightmare existence. He knows the monster's reproductive urges will become uncontrollable once spring arrives, so he must find a way to end this cycle immediately. He limps forward, leaning on his staff while focusing on the one thing he needs to stop them: authority. Our guy appears in a brief memory as the old man recalls a grateful smile, which only makes his conscience sting even more. Steeling his resolve, he decides no other choice remains if he wants to save everyone from this fate. With a heavy heart, the old man disappears into the misty forest, leaving the past behind for his final mission. Back at the house, Lizzie lets out a tired yawn as she steps out into the bright morning sun. Spotting her partner busy inside the storage shed, Lizzie calls out his name to see what he's up to. She freezes in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock at the sight of several animal carcasses hanging from the rafters. Juwon turns around with a casual smile, still holding his axe as if he did not just spend the entire morning hunting. Our boy remembers the struggle it took to catch his latest prize, reaching out his hand as the target darted away. He lunged through the grass, but the nimble rabbit was much faster than he anticipated in the heat of the moment. The rabbit stopped to look back, almost as if it was mocking his slow and clumsy movements. Out of breath and covered in dirt, Juwon refused to give up, determined to bring home a good meal for the family. He grit his teeth, focusing every bit of his energy on the hunt while the sun beat down on him. He lunges forward through the brush, putting every ounce of his energy into one final attempt to catch the nimble rabbit. Back in the present, he tells Lizzie it was no big deal, though she is clearly impressed by his survival skills. Lizzie beams with pride, her brown eyes sparkling as she admires how much her partner has grown. Our boy hands over the heavy rabbit, glad to see that all his effort was finally worth it. Our guy wonders whether they should roast or salt-cure the meat, sweating slightly under Liz's intense gaze. Lizzie is absolutely looking forward to the meal, hugging the rabbit close as she heads toward the cooking area. Juwon sets up a campfire outside and begins roasting the meat over the open flames. He carefully monitors the heat, realizing that a steady flame is the secret to bringing out the best flavor. Our protagonist holds up a finger, trying to concentrate his mana to produce a controlled spark. A tiny flame flickers at his fingertip, but he realizes the manifestation method isn't entirely under his control just yet. He turns the rotisserie, focused on getting that perfect golden brown crust before Lizzie and Dorothy get tired of waiting. The tiny sparks start flying much faster than before, as he struggles to maintain control over the flickering flame. The tiny spark suddenly explodes into a massive column of fire, leaving our protagonist completely stunned by the power of his magic. Juwon tries a different approach, carefully focusing a tiny spark at the tip of his finger. He is determined to master his flame without causing another massive explosion. Concentrating on the flickering ember, he tries stabilizing the energy before it has a chance to flare out of control again. Suddenly, his hand is engulfed in a bright, warm glow. It isn't burning him, which is a massive relief for our guy. Juwon ponders a new theory. If he imbues the magic directly into the target instead of letting it flare from his hands, he might get better results. He crouches by the rotisserie and points a finger toward the meat. He is ready to test if this internal manifestation works better for cooking. Our boy closes his eyes and concentrates every ounce of his focus on the task. One mistake here and dinner becomes a pile of ash. A controlled burst of flames erupts around the roast. He lets out a gasp of excitement because his plan actually worked. The meat sizzles beautifully as the fire wraps around it perfectly. It is finally starting to get that golden brown crust he wanted. Our guy realizes he finally cracked the code on how his magic manifests. This discovery changes everything for his future utility and combat potential. Juwon laughs with relief while checking the progress. He never thought he would be using high-level magic to make a rotisserie roast. The finished meat looks absolutely mouth-watering on the plate. Dorothy is beyond impressed, letting out a big wow at the sight of it. Back inside, Lizzie and Dorothy wait at the table with wide eyes. Juwon sets the platter down, ready to serve the feast. He grabs the roast and rips it apart with his bare hands. The steam rises as the tender meat separates easily from the bone. Our boy hands the largest pieces to his family with a proud smile. He wants to make sure they eat their fill first. Lizzie and Dorothy don't hesitate to dig in. They both take massive bites of the juicy rabbit meat Juwon worked so hard to prepare. Their faces light up instantly from the incredible flavor. Lizzie looks surprised by the quality, while Dorothy has actual hearts in her eyes. Watching them enjoy the meal brings a warm feeling to Juwon's heart. He realizes that seeing them full makes him feel satisfied too. The small home is filled with laughter and the sound of a happy family sharing a meal. It is a rare moment of peace for them. Later that evening, Juwon heads back out to practice. He unleashes a massive blast of fire that lights up the entire forest. The flames are so intense they leave the surrounding rocks glowing with heat. He is pushing the limits of his new mana control. Once he figured out the trick, using fire became incredibly easy. Our guy looks at his hands, marveling at the power he now commands. A look of fierce determination crosses his face. With healing magic and fire magic, he finally has the tools he needs to succeed. He stands alone in the grass, contemplating his future. His primary goal is to protect Lizzie and Dorothy no matter what happens. Our guy looks back at their humble shelter. He knows he has to keep getting stronger to ensure they never have to live in fear. Inside, Dorothy comes running across the room with a basket. She is carrying something very special that she wants to show off. She stops near the fireplace, holding her new friend close. The little horned rabbit looks quite comfortable in its woven nest. The rabbit stares back with its tiny dark eyes, looking surprisingly grumpy for a fluffy creature. It seems to be judging everyone in the room. Dorothy lifts the basket up high with a huge grin. She is clearly attached to this little monster already. Dorothy approaches Lizzie with her find, eager to show the rabbit to her mother. Lizzie looks up from her work, surprised by the sudden interruption. Lizzie freezes as the horned creature is thrust toward her face. She looks more than a little concerned about having a wild monster in her personal space. Ju-won walks through the door and finds his daughter waiting for him. He can tell she has been planning this introduction. Dorothy presents the rabbit to our protagonist with pride. She tells the rabbit that she is about to introduce it to someone very important. Smiling gently, Ju-won listens to Dorothy introduce the rabbit as her new older sister. He plays along to avoid ruining the happy mood. Lizzie watches from a distance, looking a bit hesitant about the whole situation. She isn't sure if keeping a monster is a good idea. Her uneasy expression says it all as she wonders if they are making a massive mistake. She wants Dorothy to be happy, but knows the danger of wild monsters. Ju-won freezes as the world language translates a shocking truth for him. Looking at Lizzie, he can hardly believe his own eyes as he whispers that there is no way this is possible. Our boy is visibly shaking, sweat dripping down his face as he tries to process the discovery. Talk about a bombshell revelation. He drops to his knees in total shock as the truth settles in. His mind flashes to a vision of a literal angel, confirming that there is a baby inside Lizzie. He reaches out toward her waist, his face flushing red as he struggles with the revelation. Lizzie stands there completely stunned, wondering what has gotten into him as she calls out his name. The brown-haired girl gasps in shock as Ju-won catches her completely off guard. Her face flushes bright red, utterly stunned by his sudden move. Ju-won drops to one knee, making her wave her hands in total embarrassment as he tries to explain himself. He clears his throat and reassures her that he did not mean anything weird by it. In truth, he believes it is much better to wait until they are fully settled before making any major moves. Little Dorothy suddenly walks in holding a basket with a horned rabbit, asking why he is on the ground. Our boy just glances back at his daughter with a gentle grin, amused by her sudden entrance. She beams with pride, eager to show off her new fluffy friend to her father. Ju-won studies the creature closely, realizing something is not quite normal about it. That horn on its forehead definitely does not belong on an ordinary pet. The bunny just stares right back with an intense, unbothered expression on its face. Stepping outside into the yard, Ju-won rests his hands against the tall bamboo fence. He remembers how both Lizzie and Dorothy threw their arms out earlier to protect the horned rabbit from him. Gripping the bamboo fence, he realizes how much this humble place is starting to feel like a real home. He looks at his open palm, considering how much their living situation has changed lately. Looking out toward the horizon, he reflects on the people now sharing his life. In a world where none of them have any blood relatives left, finding a place to belong matters most. Old Gus could easily be a grandfather to Dorothy and a warm father figure to Lizzie. Sitting cross-legged on the grass, Ju-won sets up several wooden posts alongside a full bucket of water. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath to center his mind. Ju-won visualizes his inner core igniting like molten lava inside an erupting volcano, channeling intense heat throughout his body. His hand begins to tremble as he focuses that internal energy straight into his fingertips. Sweat drips down his face as he strains to spark magic for the very first time. For a long moment, nothing happens at all, and the wooden posts remain totally undisturbed. Pushing through the frustration, he thrusts his hand forward with full force. The wooden posts instantly burst into a wild inferno of bright orange flames. Realizing the fire is spreading too quickly, Ju-won leaps up and grabs the water bucket in a panic. He throws the water directly onto the blazing wood before it can burn down the whole yard. Smoke rises from the charred logs as the soaking grass smolders under the doused embers. He lets out a breathless laugh immensely relieved that he managed to contain his own fiery magic. Little Dorothy comes rushing across the lawn toward him with bright eyes. She leaps straight into his arms without hesitating for a single second. Scooping her up into a warm hug, Juwon smiles as she giggles happily in his arms. Carrying his daughter across the grass, he listens as she excitedly cheers about her new pet rabbit. Juwon suddenly halts mid-step, sensing something subtle in the surrounding air. He glares upward into the open sky, his relaxed mood instantly turning sharp and cautious. High above the tree canopy, a flock of black birds scatters across the sky with harsh caws. Something in the forest has clearly startled them. Sensing immediate danger, Juwon turns around while holding Dorothy tight to his chest. His relaxed fatherly expression instantly hardens into pure vigilance. Little Dorothy clings to his collar in confusion, wondering why her dad suddenly froze up mid-conversation. She happily chirps about going inside to eat dinner, but Juwon simply nods, determined to keep his daughter safe inside the house. Outside the perimeter fence, a hooded old man stands at the wooden gate, calling out for Juwon to step outside. Stepping through the gate, our protagonist wipes sweat from his brow, wondering what brought the old man to his doorstep. He stands face to face with the elder, remaining cautious as he waits to hear the reason for this sudden visit. Juwon straight up asks why he showed up at such an unusual hour. The old elder looks back with a calm, unbothered expression. Waving his hand, the elder tells him to follow along, claiming he needs help crafting a small wooden toy. Though confused by the request, Juwon follows close behind as the elder leads him toward the backyard wooden workshop. They arrive near a massive pile of timber stacked outside the small wooden building. Stopping by the chopping block, the old man picks up a small hand axe while Juwon looks on with growing curiosity. He sets a thick wooden log upright on the stump, positioning his axe with steady, experienced hands. Showing off a carved wooden point, the elder demonstrates how cleanly the material can be shaped. Using a heavy wooden mallet, he strikes a wedge straight into the top of the timber block with incredible force. With another sharp strike, the wedge snaps into place, sending wood splinters flying into the air. The massive log splits cleanly down the middle right in front of Juwon, leaving our boy totally stunned by such ridiculous precision. Sunlight gleams off the wooden roof as the two step inside the workshop to finalize their craft. Inside the shed, surrounded by racks of spears and axes, the elder explains the finer points of his woodwork. He carefully fits the carved tip onto a wooden arrow shaft, assembling a fully finished projectile right before the eyes of Juwon. Sweat drips down from Juwon's brow as he hesitates, realizing the incredible craftsmanship put into this single weapon. Raising a finger, Juwon asks if he can actually take just one of these custom arrows for himself. Without hesitation, the old man holds out the arrow, handing over his finished work with a calm gaze. Bowing respectfully, Juwon accepts the handmade arrow with both hands, deeply grateful for the gift. As Juwon walks back toward his home holding the arrow, the old man silently watches him leave. Underneath his heavy hood, the eyes of the old elder narrow into a dark, calculating glare. In truth, a few days prior, the old man reported a goblin sighting to the local village chief. Hearing about the threat, the chief immediately dispatched his son to request help from a nearby town half a day away. That town houses the local adventurer guild, which handles dangerous monster exterminations. The guild is already preparing to contract skilled adventurers to march out and eliminate the monster threat. Sinister crows with glowing red eyes gather on branches across the forest, watching the land below. The old man knows exactly where the trouble began, aware that 5 or 6 people were hiding out in the mountain settlement. Back in the woods, Lizzie happily strolls through the trees carrying a basket full of fresh red apples. Unbeknownst to her, a massive green goblin looms in the shadows, locking its predatory gaze onto her. The elder knows an explosion of violence is coming soon. The hooded elder smirks cunningly in the dark, knowing his calculated schemes will soon drag the entire village into chaos. Our boy Juwon sprints through the field as fast as his legs can carry him, sweat pouring down his face as fear takes over. Meanwhile, the hooded elder stands quietly near the open doorway, gazing into the bright sunlight with an unreadable expression. A haunting memory surfaces of Juwon sobbing hysterically after being cold-heartedly told that as long as he survives, he can always start a new family. Returning to the present, the old man steps forward into the room, walking with slow, deliberate steps toward his hidden stash. He reaches down and pulls out a massive broadsword, lifting the heavy steel blade that glimmers in the golden sunlight. Both hands wrap firmly around the leather hilt, adjusting his grip as he prepares to wield the colossal weapon. As he holds the colossal blade upright, the polished steel reflects a vivid image of Juwon, Lizzie, and little Dorothy sharing a bright, joyful moment together. It serves as a reminder of the pure, simple life they built together, where nothing mattered more than that unconditional happiness. Lizzie steps outside into the cool night air, looking a bit hesitant. Juwon checks on the sturdy bamboo fence securing their campsite. He makes sure everything is safe before calling it a night. She walks over to him, holding the food carefully in both hands. Our boy turns to her, smelling the hot soup she brought along. She offers the freshly cooked stew with a gentle smile. He turns around and speaks softly to Lizzie, giving her a reassuring smile. Her presence instantly puts him at ease. Juwon blushes slightly, completely touched by her sweet gesture. He can barely hide how happy he feels inside. Sitting together by the crackling fire, he thanks Lizzie for the meal. Lizzie smiles happily at his heartfelt compliment, glad to see him enjoying the warm meal she prepared for him. A soft smile stays on his face as they share a quiet moment. He pulls her into cozy back hug right by the warm campfire. She rests gently against his chest as they savor the comforting warmth together under the peaceful night sky. The two hold each other tightly while the night fire burns bright. By morning, they work side by side washing clothes down at the river. Wringing out wet laundry by hand makes our guy really miss modern washing machines. He carries a bucket, thinking through the long process of soaking and drying garments. Lizzie sits nearby on the bank, carefully rinsing fabrics in the clear water. Dorothy comes running up, carrying a woven basket right to the edge. She excitedly shows Juwon the tiny horned creature sitting inside her basket. Beside a stuffed animal rests a real horned rabbit looking right up at them. Kneeling down, Juwon gently scoops the fluffy creature into his hands. He reaches out a finger to pat its soft fur. A strange golden glow suddenly streams from his touch into the little beast. The light spreads across the small animal as it begins to shine bright. Moments later, the sparkling light fades away from its horn. Just as quickly as the golden light appeared, the mysterious energy completely vanishes from the horn, leaving no trace behind. Gus never mentioned anything about this strange reaction when they talked before. He recalls asking Gus about horned rabbits during archery practice yesterday. Back then, the hooded instructor explained the true nature of these creatures. Horned rabbits are actually wild magic beasts roaming the surrounding fields. Yet this little guy looks completely harmless sitting in his lap. Back in the present, Dorothy watches him inspect her new pet. Sweat dropping slightly, he strokes its ears while figuring out what just happened. The adorable rabbit squishes its face and makes a tiny squeaking noise. Juwon lifts it up face to face as it lets out another squeak. Juwon sets down the basket containing the live horned rabbit and its stuffed plush counterpart, while Dorothy points at them with excitement. She insists that the wild creature and her favorite stuffed doll need to be named together. Juwon rests his chin on his hand, thoughtfully pondering what to name them while Dorothy waits with clasped hands and eager eyes. Our boy realizes that since Dorothy is involved, he has to go with a classic naming scheme for both of them. The real horned rabbit blinks with huge, curious eyes, ready to officially join the family under its new name. Dorothy names the stuffed plushie Toto, completing the adorable pairing with her new live pet. Lifting the heavy basket high in the air, the little girl beams with absolute joy, glowing from ear to ear. She lets out a happy cheer and dashes across the grass to show off her new pets to everyone nearby. Lizzie smiles warmly by the river while doing laundry as Dorothy proudly presents her basket of tiny bunnies. Meanwhile, over in the village, restless rumors begin spreading fast among the residents about goblins roaming nearby. Local villagers gather in the square, whispering that the chief's son had to travel all the way to the city for help. Anxious old men argue in hushed voices, terrified that the situation is far worse than anyone wants to admit. Across town, an old man hurries toward a woman sweeping the yard to ask if she finished preparing the carriage. She looks back at him with a deeply worried expression, clear trouble weighing on both of their minds. They exchange grim words in private, realizing that their plans are falling apart faster than expected. With arms crossed, the old woman sighs heavily, unable to hide her growing dread about what lies ahead. The elderly villager turns away with a heavy heart, deeply stressed that nothing seems to be working out. His mind reflects back on how terribly his recent secret meeting with the information broker went. Muttering under his breath, He tries to process just how badly things have spiraled out of control. Frustration finally boils over as he kicks Pebble across the dirt, furiously cursing his bad luck. Deep in the surrounding forest, a hooded man lurks behind the foliage, overhearing distant roars echoing through the trees. He knows goblins are violent creatures that constantly fight among themselves for dominance within their pack. When internal mutiny breaks out, their suppressed hunger and wild lust drive them into a bloodthirsty frenzy. Exiled from their own kind, these rogue monsters always seek out a single target for their violent urges. A horde of vicious goblins will inevitably raid nearby human settlements, targeting defenseless women and burning homes. Watching from the tree line, the old hooded man sweats nervously as he assesses the imminent danger to the region. He knows Juwon's isolated home in the forest will become the prime target for these ravenous monster packs. The old man narrows his dark eyes, weighed down by a dark secret he has carried for far too long. He remembers back when Dorothy was just a traumatized child who hid indoors whenever strangers approached, unable to smile. Even though Juwon finally taught the girl how to smile again, the old man knows it is far too late to feel guilty. A cold resolve settles over his face as he prepares to execute his true plan regardless of the cost. In his heart, he thinks back to Juwon, lamenting how he forced his own son into becoming a hunter so young. Raising a child purely for survival and hunting left deep scars that could never easily heal. Back then, he failed to realize that forcing such a brutal lifestyle would only make his son miserable. Years ago, he stood before young Juwon, placing a hand on the young boy to seal his fate as a hunter. The old man secretly apologizes to his son in his heart, feeling a momentary pang of guilt for the harsh destiny he's orchestrating. But his dark ambition quickly takes over, firmly believing there is something he must accomplish no matter what it costs him. A twisted smirk spreads across his face as he convinces himself that feeling the thrill of the hunt is true happiness. He reasons that using Juwon will ultimately force the child to become the ultimate hunter, knowing exactly where they are headed. Ahead in the dense forest, a horde of vicious goblins creeps silently through the trees, lying in wait for their target. Reaching into his heavy green cloak, the old man pulls out a mysterious letter sealed in red wax. With a sly grin on his face, he signals into the shadows to set his hidden plan in motion. Meanwhile, in another part of the woods, Caught Rabbit struggles against a rope snare tied to a tree branch. Steady footsteps tread carefully across the soft forest grass, heading straight toward the trapped wild rabbit. Juwon approaches his snare, reaching back to secure his bow as he inspects the trapped animal before him. He wipes down his sharp hunting blade, remembering how second nature this routine used to be for him. Carrying the caught rabbit in hand, our boy strolls through the sunlit forest path with his gear slung across his back. As Juwon walks along the sunny trail, he suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Something in the surrounding brush catches his attention. Turning his head back over his shoulder, he glances behind him to check the quiet woods. Standing tall among the thick trees, Juwon scans the distant ridgeline with a watchful eye. Pivoting his feet around, he decides to change directions and alter his planned route. Sensing a presence hidden high up in the dense canopy, he realizes someone is stealthily tracking his movements from above. He thinks to himself that taking a different path to lay down fresh snares might yield a better hunt.